Hello everybody and welcome back to LPL English. We are here for another day in the group stage as we start to wrap up the groups and get ready for the knockouts. My name is Grapes, joined alongside Black Bloxer here for EDG versus LNG. Bloxer, good to be casting with you for the first time. We've got two teams that unfortunately we will not be seeing for the remainder of Split 1. However, still a lot of good things to take away from this, and both of these teams currently winless in their groups. I'm sure they would love to get a W to wrap up the season.
Yeah, it feels a little bit like we've got two teams playing for pride right here, but these are organizations with massive stories behind them. Nobody wants to see either of these teams end 0-3. Unfortunately, somebody is going to have to today, but it's going to be a great scrap between these two teams. Like I said, they're definitely going to be all in on picking up this win and really being able to prove that no, there is something here. We can build on this. Not everything is lost.
Yeah, with Split 1 being such an abbreviated format, this is the last time, of course, that these guys are going to be playing, at least for a couple of months. And then I think now, between these two teams, it is just what are the things that you can take away from maybe this last series that you can build on, work on during this offseason, and then come right into it and try to be competitive once again going into Split 2. But let's take a look at the group stage overall to see where we are at, as, of course, we still have a couple of more games to go throughout the week. Of course, we are wrapping up Group C, or at least these two teams' games in Group C. We have BLG versus Thunder Talk coming up in just a little bit as well. But across the board, I think this has been a really fun format for this group stage. Going in knowing that Split 1 was going to be a bit of a shorter format, I really like what the LPL has done, with just allowing for teams to practice on this full Fearless best-of-5 format, getting the chance to play a lot of different champions throughout this season.
Yeah, it feels like an absolutely crazy departure from what we used to expect out of the LPL, all of a sudden to have such a few number of games, but at the same time, getting to jump straight in with best of fives feels like great training for the teams that do make it onto those internationals later on in the year, and it has been so fun. We've had so many different champions, we've gotten to see such a wide variety of different playstyles as well. Full Fearless is an absolutely wild way to play the game, but I've been really enjoying it, and I think that Group C has been a great encapsulation of that. Thunder Talk look like a great Fearless team, the way that they've been able to make it work with this Fearless draft, constantly changing up their playstyle, but always being able to win out in these situations. It's been so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and even though this game specifically doesn't have a ton of playoff implications, the rest of the schedule will just continue to heat up as we wrap up the week and wrap up the group stage. Just take a look at what we have left to come. Of course, we saw Anyone's Legends versus WE last night, and now, of course, throughout the rest of the week, just continues to get higher and higher stakes. That last series of the group stage, LGD versus TS, a direct play-in. The winner of that series will qualify into the playoffs. For a team like Top Esports, they had so many expectations coming in. That's going to be a very important series for them.
All of these matchups have such massive implications all the way through. Obviously, the one that we'll also be having a big look at is Thunder Talk versus BLG later on in the week. That one is going to decide who comes out on top of this group and who's going to have to settle for second place. And both of those teams have dismantled the two that we're watching today. So it's been really interesting to see the way that this group itself has shaken out. Kind of going in, it looked a lot like a sort of group of death. And I think that has kind of played out in the way that we've actually been able to see these games unfold.
Yeah, and as we saw with even Weibo versus JDG a couple of days ago, these teams, even though they've already locked their spots in the quarterfinals, they're still going to give it their 100% because getting that #1 seed in the group is just as important as just making it into the playoffs itself. You get that extra life. You start in the upper bracket. Definitely going to be a very important series for both of those squads. So make sure you stay tuned to this channel every single day to make sure you do not miss any bit of the action. But let's get into the series that we have on our hands today, that of course being EDG versus LNG. Let's start off with that EDG roster. I guess Bloxer, this team didn't have too many expectations coming in, but even though we've seen some good things, it's been a bit of a rougher road here for one of the most storied organizations in the LPL.
It really has been, and you've hit the nail on the head there. International fans will know EDG. They'll have heard of this team. Such a long-running, storied organization, as you said. And yet, things have not been looking so good. Last year, it was the beginnings of things faltering a little bit for them, and this year has really been a full encapsulation of that. It just has not been working out for EDG at all. There's been bright spots. ZDZ has had some real nice pop-off looking performances up in the top lane, a couple really nice performances as well out of Angel, and they were able to pick up a win in game 1 last week versus Thundertalk, so it's not been all doom and gloom. The issue this team's been running into has just been team fights. The way that they play out laning phases has been fine, but transitioning any advantage they manage to get for themselves in the early game into a good and well-organized team fight later on has felt like just a step beyond what they've been able to put together so far, and it's been kind of difficult to watch sometimes, knowing that they're going into these team fights in such a good spot, and hoping and praying that they're going to be able to put it together in a way that expands that lead, rather than having it begin to collapse back down.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see EDG struggle, like especially in the later stages of the game, because a lot of these players, I feel like you can call them veterans at this point, specifically with players like Angel and Wink, who've been around since like the 2020-2021 season on high-level teams, and then even ZDZ and Xiaohao at this point have been playing together for a multitude of years. I guess Assume is like the one newer player that they have on their squad, but in terms of finding that voice, finding that communication, that really hasn't happened just yet. But in terms of good things that we can take away from this roster so far, even though they've only won 1 of their 7 games early on in Split 1, I think it has to be ZDZ and Xiaohao up in the top side.
Yeah.
This is a squad that, this is a pairing that had a lot of expectations going for them last season when they were slated to start with Weibo, and even though that did not end up going the way that they wanted to, and they ended up leaving that team in the summer split, they were reunited here for 2025, and I think so far have had at least promising moments together.
Yeah, they really have. You can tell that they've got a lot of comfort in the way that they can play together. This play that you're looking at on your screen particularly was especially fun to watch. ZDZ just had a great performance on the Cassante in that one win they were able to pick up for themselves, but it just hasn't fully been able to put together, and I think today's matchup is a great time for them to really show, no, this pairing is as good as fans were expecting, as good as EDG were hoping it would be when they brought them in. Because the way that these two players do seem to play around each other is so fun. There's a lot of attention that is being put up towards the top lane. ZZZ can play very low eco. You don't have to go and put a lot of attention into his lane. But if you do, you can get him rolling early on and then rely on him to be able to carry across the rest of the map. And I think that the meta is actually in a decent place to be able to try to carry through your top laner. We've seen things from him like the Gangplank, the Jace. These are big carry champions that you can put a lot of focus into in the top lane. I think that today's matchup is a great chance for them to really try to push that way of trying to play the game.
Yeah, they got a really, impressive and experienced top side that they'll be going up against, though, on the other side with LNG. Let's take a look at their starting 5 as a whole. Not necessarily the results that we were hoping for to seeing out of this team, specifically the squad that made it to the World Championships just a year, or just this past year. But the top side of Zika and Weiwei, they are the returning pieces from last season. And then Haichao, Fodak, and Zhuo coming in just haven't looked the same as the rest of the team did.
No, exactly. And you're once again absolutely right in that these are players who have either played together for a long time or have just been around for a really long time. Fodak and Zhou, specifically, they've been playing together for ages at this point. They just spent 2 years on NIP together, doing pretty well overall and having a good time of it. Zico Weiwei, like you said, last year they were able to make it so far in Worlds quarterfinals where they got knocked out by Weibo Gaming. Great players. And once again, just hasn't quite been able to work out. It felt like the Marcia Cup at the beginning of the year was really the first look at things being not quite as you would have been expecting from a team who had done so well previously. But still, as we're talking about with these top laners, Zika, Weiwei, they have been looking pretty good. They've been the bright spot on what has been a bit of a rough split so far for LNG. And with the top side being such a focus for both of these teams, it's going to be really fascinating to see what way we end up actually going with this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Zika first was on this LNG squad that went to Worlds for the first time, like, everyone was super excited for his performances, and people said that he was maybe one of the best one of the best top laners in the world. And while he's had a couple of good performances here and there this season, I think we need to see a little bit more out of him and Weiwei, the veterans that were on this World's quarterfinals roster just, a year ago. As we said, remember, this squad had such a hot start to the World Championships as well. They made it all the way to like the top of the Swiss bracket, and then things kind of fell apart from there. But
Yeah.
I think overall, Zika is still considered by many to be one of the top performers in the LPL in terms of top laners, but just, you know, needs to get a little bit more of that out if LNG want to have a path forward with the starting 5 that they currently possess.
Absolutely, and the way that they have been drafting right here as LNG has been very focused towards what you can do through the top side, and Weiwei specifically has also been picking up a lot of kind of interesting champions. Fearless does bring out the wild and the wacky from junglers, but having things like the Pantheon being pulled out, and I haven't seen that in the jungle in a while. It's the sort of thing that you pull out when, hey, we're trying to find something, make it work some way or another, and that was actually the champion he ended up pulling out when you pick up that first win, as we're seeing here, versus Thundertalk. It looked great. The pairing was working, and if you can get a slightly different draft, potentially, a little bit more of a, I don't know, sideways draft, something we haven't seen before, and really surprise EDG, I think that could be a great way to success right here for LNG.
Yeah, and, you know, I'm very curious to see what things look like between these two squads specifically. We haven't seen them play a 5-game series yet under the Fearless format. It's only been 4 games for them, but just in terms of looking forward and how these guys can continue to develop together as a unit, the draft, of course, will be a very an important part of that here for both of these squads. I mean, it's been really fun to watch the true Fearless overall. I mean, just that series a couple days ago with JDG and Weibo going to 5 games and seeing all these, you know, wacky picks being thrown out here and there. I really like the way that they've done it here in the LPL, where you get these best of 5 straight away. You don't have to wait until later on in the playoffs to see the full chaos unfold. Like, and it's good practice for these squads too, not just for you know, the team that eventually makes it to that first stand tournament where you're going to have to be playing with a lot of Fearless, but just for the teams overall to get experience playing different compositions under their belts.
Yeah, it really has been fascinating how different this has been for the LPL compared to what we've been seeing in other regions. Obviously, coming from the EU, LEC is playing a very different format. A lot of best of ones. They're technically Fearless in that I guess you can't really do anything else in a best of 1, but you don't get that adaptation. You don't get to see these teams play up against each other, and we're not even really doing second round robins. It's 1 round, win your games, or do nothing. And it's interesting how, even though this is a very different format, obviously, it still is single round robin. You are still playing up against these teams once. This is your one chance right here to play up against EDG, LNG, and really show what you are made of. Very, very different all across the world.
Yeah, the interesting kind of difference or you know, similarities but differences between the LEC format and the LPL format is, you know, the minimum number of games each team can play is 9, because you can lose all 3 best of 5s 3-0 here in the LPL. In the EU, if you lose all 9 of your games in the, you know, first round robin, you're out. But just the way that it's structured makes it feel a lot different here in the LPL, where you're playing these full best of 5s series against certain teams. That is, I think, the big difference here, which does, I think, increase the quality of I guess practice even that these guys are getting, especially because split 1 is considered to be that kind of warm-up split before we really dive into things going into the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And beyond that, with playing all of these best of 5s, there are big gaps between when we last saw these teams. I mean, last time we saw EDG, especially with Chinese New Year as well, was a while ago. You have got a ton of time between when we last got to see what you can put out onto the board and what you've got now. And it'd be interesting to see what the adaptation is going to be here, because that's plenty of time. That's another patch that's moved around. Everything has changed. Everything is a little bit too far, but things have changed, and it's enough time to hopefully be able to sort out some issues. I think especially for EDG, that makes me excited to watch them play, because the issue we've been running into with this team so much has been their team fight ability, has been that team play. That's something you can fix. That's something that good coaching, good practice can help to at least plaster over, at least make it usable in this series. And so it'd be really interesting to see if EDG have been able to fix any of those issues, or if it's going to feel pretty much the same as it did 2 weeks ago. Yeah,
it's one of those things where you feel good that you're, I guess, maybe losing the games in the way that you are, because it's very coachable, fixable mistakes, especially when you have this 2-week break. Like, if you're just getting stomped in lane every game, that's I feel like a little bit harder to teach in a bit of a shorter period of time. But knowing that these 5 players on EDG, they have what it takes to perform individually. It's just how they work together. I think is a very promising thing for this squad moving forward. Again, not a ton of expectations for this team going into the year, but I think as they continue to develop as a group of 5, that is where things can start to get very interesting. You can see the intro playing on our screen. We are getting closer to starting off this first series, I guess, of our last round of games in Group C. I don't know the best way to put it, but it's like every team in this group has played 2 series. And we have this one here between EDG and LNG, and then, of course, later on in the week, BLG Thunder Talk playing for that first place slot.
Big game. Big game. This one, it's unfortunate that it is going to be the last time we're going to get to see either of these teams for a while, but hopefully they're going to put on a great show for us right here, really close. Like you said, I want to see 5 games. I want to see the full Fearless from both of these teams, end it on an absolute banger. Yeah, interesting to see what we actually get. Right now, players walking on out. Last time I was here, EDG walked the wrong way towards their stage, which was really funny to see.
Hey, this is progress. Then they made it to their seats in time. I almost saw like Angel smiling a little bit, knowing maybe he knew that like, okay, we can't mess this up this time.
No,
and then LNG on the other side.
Correct seats always helps. You know, everything, all the little details, tighten all the screws, get it all correct as much as you can. Yeah, LNG gonna wander on out as well. Into the 1v1. Now, I've not been the biggest fan of the 1v1s so far. I don't hate them, but I feel like we've had a lot of the same sort of looks, the same sort of metas. How have you been feeling about them?
It's been interesting to see the teams experiment with different strategies. I think one of the games that I was on, like, you know, where we saw an Anivia yesterday in the 1v1s. There was an Alistar that was played to like try to headbutt your opponent into the fire or something like that. It feels like, though, a lot of the times you just got to stick to the classics. I think when we try to cook too hard, it's fun to like theory craft, but then when you get into onto the abyss, it's like, oh, this actually like stinks and like not actually that good. And so I don't know who's playing this 1v1 here, but hopefully they have some fun with it. I know, you know, for these teams, you know, even though obviously every series matters in terms of qualification for playoffs, not necessarily the most important. I feel like in general, as long as both of these teams can like feel good about something that, you know, about certain moments throughout the series that they could build on going into next split, that's a good thing. So I want to see them have some fun here in this 1v1. Go a little crazy.
Yeah, let's get something absolutely wild. I don't want to see another Tryndamere. I've seen a lot of Tryndamers throughout a lot of these 1v1s. Let's get something absolutely crazy. Let's have a Teemo off. 2 Teemos up against each other fighting. No, to be honest, that sounds boring as well. That's not exactly a high skill expression champion to be watching.
Just something where they kill each other early on. Not just because that saves the amount of time they get to vamp, but also just because it's more fun. It's more exciting when they go for the kill or go for the early kills instead of going for just waiting for that circle to close in. We have Angel versus Zika, so not actually a lane matchup that we'll be seeing in game, but both players with World Championship experience, obviously, and I guess the challengers that both of these squads decide to send forward for this first look of gameplay between these two teams.
It looks like Zika gonna go for something very aggressive. I like it. Okay.
And that's a pretty early lock-in there of the Garen.
That's very early to go just straight up towards the Garen. Right, Garen, Riven. That's a matchup actually I personally haven't seen yet, although obviously that is a top lane matchup that happens quite a lot. Spin to win, Garen, is such an interesting pickup right here because you are fully reliant, not on your hands ability, on picking the right moment to go in. Very opposite to the Riven, where it's all about how you can pilot the champion.
Oh man, this is gonna be very fun. I like how the top laner picked like the very mechanical champion, the very mechanical top laner, and then the mid laner picked like the pretty easy top laner. No, like all things considered, he's Garen. Not a ton of mechanical expression right there. So still has a lot of skill, still has a lot of damage that he could definitely put out. So it'll be interesting to see what things look like here. Again, first to 2 kills. Before that fire starts to close in, or first tower will win you this 1v1 and will earn your team a side selection. So those are the stakes between this matchup going in. You can see some of the players staring in. Maybe ZDZ giving Angel some tips on the Garen. Maybe he's played it a little bit more because he's
Here's how this matchup goes. Here's how you need to be thinking about playing this one out. No. With this 1v1 as well, is super important. Blue side is massively favored at the moment. Teams are loving being able to pick up some of those really strong first pick available options. Also, forcing your opponent to be on red side and have to ban away something like the Skarner has been really interesting as well. But they're just going to jump straight to the fighting, exactly what we want to see.
Yeah, and double combat spells as well with the barrier and an ignite for both of these guys. Looks like Zika got the better hand of things early, but looks like neither one wants to go too aggressive, burn anything just yet. See Zika really dominating this early lane, wanting to make sure to try to deny as many minions from Angel as possible. The thing is, with the Garen, with that regen, you will be able to stay in the lane a little bit longer than perhaps Zika will be able to. A lot more inherent sustain.
And part of why you want to get the early push as well is that you can then contest your opponent's relic, but be pretty confident in being able to get your own one for yourself. Very important for keeping your health as high as possible. You can see Zika just playing this one out really effectively, basically ignoring the fact that Angel's going to be constantly jumping in, trying to silence, trying to deal a little bit of damage. Ooh.
It's like a pseudo cheater recall that we're seeing from Zika at this point. Like, you got 500 gold. I don't know if that's gonna be that useful. Maybe you pick up like a like a ruby crystal and a potion. For Angel, he's definitely just waiting until level 6 because without that Demacian Justice, you're not gonna be able to do too much. I feel like.
No, you really do need to have that execute to be able to win out onto this matchup, whereas I think Riven's got a little bit of an easier time to try to play this one out. The barrier also that both of these champions have taken is going to be very impactful too. You can use that to pretty much stop that ulti from being anywhere near as good as you would really want. Now, you do lose the push as Zika because you do head back to base, but I like the decision, to be honest. I think having that extra ruby crystal, the little bit of extra health from the pot as well, can be huge in just trying to keep up with the sustain, as you were saying with the Garen.
Oh, looks like Zika canceled Angel's back a little bit. Zika setting up a freeze, it looks like. So we're getting into like the real nitty gritty here of this 1v1 Voxer, where it's not just the how fast you can kill, it's about wave manipulation too a little bit.
God, I've watched this in top lane plenty of times at this point, and hey, apparently it's come on to the 1v1s as well. Nothing can be as dull as watching two ADCs just farm themselves all up to 100 gold, and that's the way that the 1v1 was won. I think this one will end in bloodshed, but at least for right now, yeah, it's all about the control. Now Zika goes in a little bit, but is constantly just jumping in and out, trying to bait out that divisive strike to just try to get a little bit of an advantage there, and then you can try for the all-in once that's down.
Yeah, it seems like with both the barrier up for both of these guys, it seems like neither one really wants to fully go in, but Zika doing a nice job chunking Angel out a bit, throwing some Qs in, maybe some animation auto cancels as well to just try to whittle away at this health bar. You see Angel actually going for the more aggressive build, bought a crit cloak upon going back to base, so looking to be a little bit more high DPS, and also trying to maybe increase his odds of, or feeling a little bit lucky here. They're going to actually just go in. Angel and Zika both have the Ignite on top of him. Zika has the ultimate available, will not throw it out just yet, and will only send Angel to about 300 HP. I think the important thing, though, Bloxer, there, is that Zika did use both of his summoner spells. He's not going to have that barrier for the next little bit.
Yeah, no barrier, no ult, no ignite, put Zika in a bit of a precarious situation right here, because Angel didn't have to use the barrier and still has got that ulti, so is definitely going to be in a strong position right now. Needs, though, to get the wave back into a good spot to be able to head back to base as well, because that's going to be a black cleaver completed right here for Zika, and that's going to be a huge power spike if you can't head back to base and match it. Should be able to, does have quite a lot of gold in his back pocket, does Angel. Oh, not quite. Not going to have that fully completed item. And so is going to be behind a little bit right here and have to be careful. The advantage with the ulti, with the barrier, should, I think, make up for it. But it does leave this 1v1 still in a very precarious situation when otherwise I think it would be a massive advantage for Angel.
Yeah, if he had that full completed item, I think he would have just been very keen on going in like as soon as possible. But now maybe he has to be a little bit more careful. You can see Zika's doing a ton of damage. Not any resistances built here by Angel. No defensive stats whatsoever apart from that D shield. So And now go back in here after taking that health relic. And now maybe more keen to try to farm this wave out a little bit. Just slow things down. It looks like we're not going to get the 2 deaths unless something happens very, very quickly. We're probably going to have to wait for that fire to start closing in.
Yeah, I think these two are going to have to be forced together. They don't really want to fight. You know, they're jumping in chunks of little bits of damage, but Angel doesn't really feel like he can go fully in spin to win right now. Heading back to base again, likely to finally pick up that fully completed item. There it is, Phantom Dancer now going to be in inventory, so that should even things up a decent amount. That's a big spike of damage right here for Angel. If there's ever a time to go in, it would be right now. That ulti is going to be down for just a little bit longer for Zika, so if you can just jump fully in, try for that full commit, this is your opportunity. Unfortunately though, Riven just has way more mobility than a Garen does, and if you don't get that silence off, there's kind of nothing you can do to keep Zika around.
Yeah, it's a really nice job from Zika to get that wave pushed in as fast as possible. Now both of the summoner spells are back up, so Angel was not able to make use of that disparity at all. Zika heads back to base, picks up the plated steel cap. That is very big, specifically, you know, against somebody like the Garen, and we get closer and closer to what could be the ending of this 1v1. Man, we were so excited that we are going to see like Garen versus Riven slapping each other. It's the same old. These guys are a little bit too, you know, they're a little bit too defensive for my liking.
Yeah, nobody wants to give this one up. Blue side is such a boon right now.
Okay,
now they're going to go in.
Both the ignites, they have been popped. Zika does use the ultimate once again, but we're not going to be able to throw it out to do any sort of meaningful damage, it looks like. Now the wave does come under the turret. Angel posturing aggressively, wanting to make sure to silence Zika if he does decide to go in. It looks like it's just a little bit of posturing as there comes that ring of fire. Don't know if Bloxer, if these guys are going to be able to get resets off. Okay, this is going to be their last chance to head back to base, pick up any last items before we begin our ultimate showdown.
And Angel does get back to base. Zika does not. Didn't have enough gold, presumably, to be able to pick anything else up that's going to be that useful. A Phage is completed onto Angel. And they're going to be forced to fight. They're going to have to go in onto each other right now. No ignites, barriers on both, ultis on both, and a slight item advantage for Angel right here. Let's see if Garen can spin to win for this one.
I mean, I think it's a big advantage for Angel, especially as the fire begins to encircle the 2 players. Side selection at stake here in the 1v1. Angel going to come in, spin to try and win. Zika popping the barrier very early on. And remember, does not have that ultimate, so no extra damage, no potential execute. As we continue to close in, Angel still has the ult, still has his barrier. It's looking very good potentially for EDG's mid laner. There comes the spin, there comes the justice, and EDG's Angel wins the 1v1.
There you go. That's why you pick up the Garen. The point at which the circle of fire closes in, your opponent can't walk away from the spinning. And like you said, it will be Demacian Justice for the win right there. And EDG, they're going to be able to pick themselves up side selection. Now, I'd assume it's going to be a blue side pick. Teams have pretty much 100% wanted to go towards the blue side in the current meta. Red side, with the counter pick, just hasn't felt so strong at the moment.
Yeah, and you can see the confirmation right there on the lower third. EDG will be on the blue side to start things off. As you mentioned, the preferred side for basically every single team here in the LPL. And it'll be interesting to see how the draft ends up kind of unfolding. I feel like in this new patch, there's new priorities. A lot of the OPs that have really dominated the early part of the season have been tapped just a little bit. And so getting a chance to see what these 2 different teams prioritize, because this is the first time that we are seeing them from you know, the break that we just had for Lunar New Year.
Yeah, and what do you want to do as your specific playstyle as well? EDG, they seem to have found good success in that first matchup up against Thundertalk with a heavily teamfight orientated composition. As we've been saying, that's what they've been struggling with a little bit, but actually it was a composition that wanted to teamfight, that wanted to go in, that ended up working out for them sort of the best in that matchup. Perhaps it was because it was such a strong one that it kind of plastered over what were the issues we were seeing with them in their specific team fights, and they were able to actually unlock it and look pretty good in that one. There was a very aggressive pickup with the Cassante, which, you know, doesn't have to be aggressive, but with the way that it was played out right there by ZDZ, very aggressive, was taking up so much space, and he was buying so much time for his carries to be able to do kind of whatever they wanted. It was a Varus, I think, where you could just sit miles back, not really worry about constantly being jumped on. Same thing with the Talia, good poke, and then with just the amount of space you're able to pick up for ZDZ, it made these team fights a hell of a lot easier than they've been finding it in a lot of other ways. For LNG, their win up against Thundertalk, whilst it was a nice win for them, it didn't feel like it told me anything specific about the way they wanted to play.
And so, getting right into things here. Skarner still across the ban table here on red side. I was going to say Cassante going to be a huge pickup for both of these teams. You alluded to it. We saw it in the highlight packages. Both of these top laners did really love this champion. But with that taken away, it looks like ZDZ is going to lock in the Jace for game number 1. The response on the other side, maybe some marksman priority here. Bloxer, we see a Varus and a Corki.
Okay.
One of those will be going into a solo lane, most likely.
Yeah, we've seen the Corki in the solo lane relatively often, but to be honest, I think that pulling the Varus into one could be really interesting. The amount of poke that he can lay down is great. It will obviously depend on what the supports are you're looking at and what the matchup you've got into is. If this is locked in right here with a Rel and a Misfortune, okay, this is very telegraphed right here out of EDG. These two champions love a good team fight, and the thing with a Misfortune composition is that you only have to have it work properly once. There's only one team fight that you specifically need where too many people stand still in your ulti and you can just win out a team fight for you, and I really like that for EDG because they've had some struggles with setting up team fights. Just needing it to work really well once to get a big playoff, get a lot of kills, can be really good, and it will be that Sejuani locked in here for LNG.
Yeah, you mentioned how EDG struggling in teamfight execution so far early in this first split. Perhaps if you have a more easy to execute composition where I feel like MFRL at this point is one of the classic wombo combo bottom lanes that you can go. You throw out the bullet time, Magnustorm on top of it, trap everybody in that MF ulti. That is a way to maybe make things work here for Assume and Wink as we head into the second phase of bans with Sejuani picked up here for Weiwei. Looks like Xiao Hao's champion pool will get targeted just a bit, and an Mbessa ban going towards Zika. Now, one thing I want to maybe propose to you here, Bloxer, a little bit. This is something that was more popular, I think, like about a year ago at this point, but Zika likes to play some crazy things every once in a while. He's a very lane-dominant player. Could we even see the Varus like in the top lane as some sort of answer to this tank Jace with all the percent HP damage that it has in its kit?
I think that is certainly a possibility, and it would be a really fun matchup. Like we've been saying, this top jungle duo is the place that we're looking for both of these teams, and the Varus can help to plaster over a lot of the issues other top laners have with the Jace, where you're just getting poked out constantly and then all in for all of your health. It's such a difficult matchup to play out for a lot of the traditional top laners, so pulling the Varus up there would help out, and it would also allow the Corki to go into the bot lane, where it's been looking so very strong at the moment and works very well overall into the Misfortune. I think it could be a really interesting option. We'll have to see if it's the way that LNG want to go. We see a couple more bans towards the top and towards the jungle. Right now, it looks like LNG, they want to save that counter pick till later on, and they would also really like to still have a bit of that flexibility. Like you said, we don't necessarily know if they still need a top laner, still need a bot, still need a mid. We'll have to see. It will be the Braum being locked in right now. That's a lot of CC, a lot of long-range setup right here for LNG. And EDG's response right now, they need themselves a jungler, most certainly. The Wukong has been one of those premier pickups at the moment. It works so well in these teamfight-orientated compositions, works alongside the Wombo combo really well. Not sure that that's where they're going to go. Instead, actually just going to go towards the Victor right now. Still, works well in these team fights.
Very classic mage pick. Corki Victor, most likely going to be that mid lane matchup, unless, of course, we see some of that shenanigans here for LNG on this R5. I will say that overall, very easy to execute teamfight composition here for Edward Gaming, so that is a good sign for them if they want to try to improve on some of the things that they were perhaps struggling with earlier on in the year with their earlier losses to BLG and Thundertalk. Xiao Hao going to pick up the Xin Zhao, and that will round out the composition. Now let's see what LNG want to do. Hovering the Wukong and going to actually lock it in. So this is like the alternate option in terms of trying to be really aggressive into the Jace early on. Wukong can stack a lot of armor with the passive, can jump in and trade pretty well, can jump out with the W as well. I'm very curious. This is the first time I've seen a Wukong solo lane in a very long time.
In ages as well. I have not seen it for a long, long time. And for good reason. It hasn't been the strongest in solo lanes and has just been so good in jungle. Why would you take it away from the jungle? But that feels like another benefit of picking up this Wukong right here. You now don't get to pick it, nor do your opponents for the rest of this matchup. You've now just locked down two of those best in-class junglers between the Sejuani and the Wukong. So overall, LNG, their composition right here, I think is really, really interesting in the way that they've got quite a lot of long-range engage between the Sejuani and the Varus, but then their team fight should still be absolutely fine because you've got champions that can do a lot of AoE CC, slow down what EDG want to do with their composition.
Very creative draft overall from LNG. It seems like they have maybe the less standard of the picks, especially up there in the top side. They also have the double marksman here with the Varus and the Corki. And we'll see how it goes against Edward Gaming and their more traditional composition. You see the 10 players on your screen getting ready for the first game of a best of 5. Both of these teams playing their last series of Split 1 of the 2025 LPL Split. Of course, still a lot of expectations for these squads throughout the rest of the year. Most notably for LNG, want to get back on the right track after qualifying for the World Championship in 2024. And a series win here could certainly help as we're on to the Rift for game number 1.
Yeah, you want to be moving into next split with some momentum. You don't want to be that 0-3 team. Somebody has to be, and that means that there are still a lot of expectations on this series, despite the fact that there won't be any progression for either of these teams. And in terms of early aggression, look at this. These two bot laners just going to go toe-to-toe. Photic taking a lot of damage, but he's happy to step up.
You know, I guess they'll both go back to base after that. It's a little,
fun.
Hey, how you doing? Little handshake between the bot laners as we start things off. You know, maybe Zhuo gonna try to stop the recall, but not going to be able to make that happen. Curious to see what Zika has in his runes. So he's gone with the Grasp of the Undying and the Demolish, and then in the Inspiration for secondary. I'd imagine go something like a Sheen, and his goal is to just dash in, a bonk on the head with the Q, and dash out with the W. That's that in terms of just very short trades early on in this laning phase.
Yeah, and that's the way that you have to play it, because if you sit in an extended fight with this Jace, you're gonna begin to lose it, and lose it hard as well. And these top lanes really are the place that we've been talking about so far, and for good reason, and I think we're going to see some ganks up towards the top side in this game. I wouldn't be surprised if we do get to see both of these junglers pathing their way towards it at some point during the early stages of the game. A lane you can very easily influence. A little bit harder to gank onto a Wukong, obviously, than it is a Jace, but both of them are gankable, and with the CC and damage setup you have, could be a great way to influence the lane.
You can see just how aggressive Zika is being here in this lane, and it's working out. Remember, get armor for every auto that you have on this Wukong, so that just increases the amount of safety and amount of defensive ability that Zika is able to play with here in this laning phase. Imagine when he gets level 2, will continue to go aggressive as he would unlock another one of his abilities, either the Crushing Blow or the Clone. We'll see what he decides to end up going with. But I mean, it's always fun whenever I play a lot of top lane, and so just seeing like these unique matchups and how they interact with some of the champions that have been around maybe for a little bit longer is always a very interesting thing to see.
Yeah, a lot of new, interesting, fancy champions in the top lane. We haven't stopped talking about Cassandra.
Oh yeah, the LPL broadcast likes it too.
Yeah, last year, 2 years at this point. But hey, these champions are also really fun, and I love that we're getting to see a lot of Jace in the current meta. Even though it is the slightly tankier version, rather than the solo queue, I'm gonna one-tap your ADC version that we get to see, in our own personal games. It's still been really fun because this champion can take over lanes and really can look so good if you can get it working. If you can get a couple of kills early on, it becomes almost impossible to deal with him in the 1v1. Right now, though, ZDZ keeps taking massive chunks of damage, and I love the way that Zika is playing this out, right? Just keeps jumping on forwards, bonk, jump back. You take a decent amount on the trade. That's one of the joys of Jace. Hang on. Ooh. But
he
he's
was
still
very
coming
close.
out on top.
If he didn't get pushed back right there, that could have been very, very dangerous there. As Zika does force EDG to go back to base early on. So things going great for him in the top side. And I don't know if you saw there on that lower third block, sir, but it said that I think the last time that a Wukong top was picked in the LPL was almost 1,100 days ago. You have to go back to the summer of 2022. So just in terms of how long ago it's been since we've seen this champion in this position specifically, it's definitely, it's been a minute.
Yeah, and the big thing about having all of this pressure right now in the top lane for Zika is that that's going to really help out Weiwei in terms of being able to move towards these objectives. You can get on top of these grubs a heck of a lot easier, and I think grubs are going to be very important in this matchup. Both of these teams relatively even on how quickly they can take towers. Having 4, 5, 6 grubs would be a big impact. Right now, though, it looks like there's a potential attempt at a gank going on bot lane. Assume knew what was up, was able to buy enough space for himself to call that one off. Wink doesn't get punished for walking away, doesn't lose out onto his ADC, but it's good to see Weiwei at least attempting to get some ganks going early on. Both of these junglers are great at ganking, but so far, for the first 4 and a bit minutes, we've seen very quiet early games from both of them.
Yeah, I wonder if they knew if Wink was just like completely got red buff by the time they started that gank, if they would have gone a little bit harder for it, but it looks like instead playing it more on the cautious side, as now you see Zhao Hao going towards that second respawn of the Raptors is level 5 compared to Weiwei's level 4. That could mean something in terms of this level, or sorry, Weiwei just being level 5, I should say. Yeah. As well. Haichao taking a little bit of damage here in this mid lane. It looks like a dive would be very difficult, but it does allow for Zhao Hao to go aggressive here on this Raptor spawn. Down to the bot lane we go. Looks like Wink getting tagged just a little bit, and I think that Weiwei was able to secure all of this chicken as well.
Yeah, wasn't quite able to steal away the rest of those chickens. Is just going to have to head on back to his own set, is Zhao Hao. And these 2 junglers, for how good their champions are at ganking early on, haven't really been able to get too aggressive so far. There hasn't really been the opportunity. It's very interesting right there in that previous play we were seeing where you're stepping up, you're trying to steal away some chickens, but your mid laners, both of them, don't care. They are happy to just keep on fighting amongst themselves in the mid lane. Didn't want to roam up, didn't want to potentially try to get a little bit of a collapse going between Haichao and Weiwei. I think they could potentially have been able to pick up a kill. Obviously, they don't try for that one, and instead, we're going to see both these junglers around these grubs. Now, with all of the early lane pressure that Zika has had in the top lane, it's actually a reset timer that came through for him, and so that early push isn't going to come through and giving him the early space he would want around these grubs.
Yeah, it was actually on the first reset that both of these top laners had. ZDZ getting a nice chunk onto Zika. So instead it looks like LNG going to fight in the mid lane, but looks like the gravity well actually stuns up 2, forces Haichao to flash away with the Arcane Storm coming down on top of him. But here comes Zika. That's a Wukong top lane, and he's level 6 with that Tiamat, and will pick up the first kill of the game as Assume goes down in the mid lane at the cost of the grubs going over to EDG.
That was possibly the single best gravity well I've ever seen. I don't think I watched those stun multiple champions basically ever, but it doesn't matter in the end because Zika roams on down because of the reset timer, which originally I thought was a little bit of a mistake. You don't have all of that pressure around those grubs like you would want to early. Actually turns into a massive benefit because you're able to arrive to that mid lane play quicker. And as we have a look back at this one, you can see it was a great gravity well, exactly what you want as Wink, because you can then jump straight in onto the Corki. Not quite able to pick up that kill though. Corki obviously so mobile, and then over the wall in comes Zika, beautiful on the knock-up. And Assume has just no way to be able to survive that one through, and this is what we're going to have to keep watching for the rest of this game. The Wukong paired with the Sejuani is a disgusting combo in terms of what CC it can put down, what you can do to get on top of a backline, and Assume Angel, these are 2 incredibly squishy and immobile carries, whom if you can take them out, that's the majority of the damage just gone, and I don't know necessarily that on this EDG composition there's enough frontline protection for them.
Yeah, and Zika is going to have to continue to be that big diver for the team. Rest of the squad really likes playing that front to back, but Zika will have the opportunity to go a little bit more aggressive throughout these team fights. And we'll say, though, despite the fact that that kill did go LNG's way, EDG did pick up all 3 of the grubs, as well as getting 2 plates onto ZDZ, who got a lot of alone time in the top side of the map. So actually gold very slightly in favor of EDG, but just very even overall. So even though Zika picks up that 1 kill, still a very, very close game.
It really is, and we'll see what the impact of those grubs is going to be as we move on through the game. If ZZZ is able to get even more time on this tower, that first blood tower could go down very, very quickly. Obviously, it would require Zika being drawn away from the lane, something that we haven't seen so far. But as more items, more levels get under ZDZ's belt, this 1v1 matchup should get a little bit easier. It shouldn't be quite so much just constantly getting jumped by the Wukong. You should be able to do your own damage back. A lot of pings going on around this bottom side. How there's nothing really you can do up against the Corki specifically, and that is the other side of this very immobile set of carries that you've got for EDG. LNG, you have slightly more mobility on your carries. The Varus is still going to be jumpable, but that's not the same thing for the Corki, and the Corki does so much of this team's damage. If he's able to weave effectively through these fights, that could be big. Ooh, this could be risky though for ZDZ. We'll see if he oversteps up here.
Yeah, meanwhile, there's potential dive going on the bot side, but we're going to look up towards top first as the Cyclone comes out initially. There goes the Glacial Prison as well. ZDZ will fall here in this 2v1 situation. Another kill going towards the Monkey King. We'll see what EDG can maybe get on the back end, but it looks like Photic and Duo are just going to be on out of there. Haichao teleporting down to the bot lane to prevent that dive from happening.
No, you don't want to allow your bot lane to get dove, especially not when the play is going so well for you in the top side. And indeed, it was stopped. That does now mean that you don't have yourself a teleport, so it is going to be a teleport advantage coming through in a couple minutes' time. Angel doesn't quite have that one available, but it will be up soon enough. And that could potentially be big for the next set of fights around the around the Grubs, or potentially around the Drake in a few minutes. We'll have a look back in the picture-in-picture of what it was that ended up happening. It was just a straight-up teleport. It wasn't even as the dive was coming through. And you're just able to swap this lane over, give your bot lane a little bit of free time mid as well to pick up a little bit of extra CS. And so overall, nothing too much ends up changing right here. You are getting a reset through from Angel. He's going to pick up the Blackfire Torch. Interesting to see which lane he heads into. And if it is going to be mid lane, a lot of pings going on around the Grubs right now. Weiwei not in the area, so it looks like it's going to be all 6 picked up right here for EDG. That is big for both the feats and what the Grubs can give you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Photic and Duo, they were set up in the mid lane rather admirably to go for this Grub fight if they wanted it, but just looks like Weiwei and them not on the same page. Instead, it looks like Angel is going to be sent up to the top lane to try to get a couple of these plates and also to just force Zika out of a situation where he could potentially go for any sort of steal. So it will be all 6 of the Grubs picked up for Cao Hao and EDG. Haichao getting some plates on the bottom side as a trade. And now Photic's got to be careful because he's got 2 members collapsing on top of him very, very quickly here.
Yeah, gonna have to escape out towards the bottom side. Does he get caught by one of the stuns? All it takes is one right here.
Yeah, Flash Magnet Storm. It's not even any time for Photic to react. He does flash over the wall and flashes that thumbs up as well, so should be out just fine. A trade of Summoner Spells is still a good thing for EDG as they pick up the win in that topside river overall with all 6 Grubs secured.
It is, but not even having to use the cleanse right there for Photic's huge. You don't want to lose the cleanse right now. Losing cleanse flash and potentially your life would have been a massive disadvantage.
Oh, wow. They clear all the wave down on that top side. ZDZ already chunked down about 500 HP as the Arcane Storm chunks way down to 40%. A lot of poke going down as all 5 members of EDG are up on the top side. They need to make this happen, and they do. Shutdown going the way of Cao Hao, and now Wink is crashing down onto Weiwei instead, turning his targets towards Zhou, who has to flash away. Wind becomes lightning, knock up, and Cao Hao picks himself up a double kill.
Huge double kill going through. Haichai gonna be able to
he got
pick up the tower. Yeah, he just... Wait, no he didn't.
No, it was first tower for LNG. Haichao barely was able to get that one. So that is the first feat of strength going over. And now it's just going to be whoever picks up this next kill, potentially, if LNG get one, it will be their feats of strength. If not, EDG, you just need one more objective. Let's take another look here at this replay. Blockster, really nice job from the top side of LNG to clear the wave, and a nicely timed Glacial Fissure on top of it, but it just was not enough for the overload that EDG sent their way.
Now, once you end up with 5 people in your lane, there's very little that you can do to stop this full dive from going on. Zika, unfortunately, just gets caught out in the wrong spot. It's then a good chase, but it's the tower that's the interesting bit right here. Desperately trying to pick up that first tower is Haichao, just about is able to do so. It was so close, in fact, that he said that his tower was taken second on the in-game chat. Now gonna get chased around right here by Xiao Hao. Has to flash.
Oh, wow. 3 talent strike knockup still does connect, but Haichao was able to gain enough distance, and with the teleport in from Zika, EDG now on the retreat. Infernal Dragon is available, so the bottom side is where both of these teams want to fight right now. Zika has Flash and the Cyclone at his disposal. Looks like he could have found a nice target, but instead will back off for now. It is all 10 players down here in this bottom side of river. We're playing all random, all bot, I guess, right now, as they now rotate back towards the mid lane.
And this is what we were calling for out of EDG with their teamfight orientated composition. The that wants to go in, doesn't really want to be going backwards though, whereas LNG, they're much happier to go back. Right now, EDG, they've got the fast track onto this fight. Oh no.
Oh wow, Chain of Corruption and that piercing arrow with all those blight stacks forces Xiao Hao down to about 400 HP. Was not able to get the Crescent Guard off in time, so he will be forced back at least to one of his camps to try and heal up a little bit, and that gives LNG first track towards this dragon if they want it.
Yeah, but EDG, they're just going to peel off, pick themselves up a bot lane tower as well, making this play work for them across the entire map with the 6 scrubs. That one's going to fall quite quickly. Let's see, though, there could be a steal.
Another thing as well, EDG, if they pick up this dragon, that will be the feats of strength going over their way. About 300,000 HP. He's going to go and reset. And so it looks like just going to be a trade of towers as well, as Haichao doing a really nice job of picking up those objectives where he is able to buy that time. And now back to the Infernal Dragon. Now EDG go. Both teams been just sticking around this bottom side. Wei going to try to go for a steal. It should be a 50-50, but it is secured by the Xin Zhao. Teleport comes in from Haichao as they want to fight this in a 5v5. And Zika has himself a tremendous flank. It's a 3-man cycle. It's going to land that knockup onto a Seaman Haichao or Xiao Hao once again, but there's just no follow-up and he will go down. Bullet time is blocked by the Brahmi very, very well. And now ZDZ on the back side of things is forced to retreat. That is the dragon, and that is the feats of strength going EDG's way in an extended 1-for-1.
Yeah, EDG going to be happy with the way that that one played out overall. We're able to pick themselves up that bot lane tower, and it's 1-for-1 in terms of the kills. Really interesting fight in the way that the teams were here, set up for long enough that they had to peel off to go deal with waves, go pick themselves up towers, and this flank out of Zika is huge. Yes, you don't actually manage to pick yourself up any extra kills, and there's no real follow-up because Wink goes in at the same time, but this is a not particularly tanky or heal-heavy Wukong at this point, and he was able to survive for so long. Once we get later on into the game, now that you've got that Titanic completed, once you're a little bit stronger as well, it's going to be even easier for Zika to get into the backline of EDG and buy himself a lot of time, a lot of space for the rest of the team to kill whoever the front line are, and then peel back and turn the rest of this team fight around. I think EDG played that one out about as well as they could have, and they're also going to be able to pick themselves up this Rift Herald, so overall, objectives on the map have been very EDG favored so far.
Yeah, and in that last fight, I think you got to give a lot of credit to Wink there on the rail. As soon as Zika went in, using that crash down to force Wei away, that meant Zika was left all alone and ended up going down in basically a 1v3, and it gave him just enough time to pick up that kill first over Zika before Wink went down on the other side of things.
So
that gives EDG the full feats of strength. They're going to have those upgraded boots for the remainder of this one. It's been a very, very close game between these two teams. It seems like even though both squads have been eliminated from playoff contention blocks, they both really want to go out on a high note here in their last series of Split 1.
Absolutely, they are. And EDG so far, they are making it work for themselves in this game. ZZ jumping on forwards. Is going to get jumped here by Zika, but has friends as well. Wei in the area, just about going to get spotted out. Otherwise, that could have been a risky situation for ZDZ. Right now, there are no objectives on the map to be setting up for. Mid lane, tier 1 tower still available for EDG though. They need to pick this one up before the next set of big objectives come up. Otherwise, they're going to have a lot of less mobility, a lot less map to really be able to play around. Indeed, they're going to drop themselves the Rift Herald on into the mid lane. See if anybody rides it, because that would be quite the journey.
A little bit too aggressive even for EDG's liking, so they're going to just let it get a bit of a chunk on that mid lane tier 1. Right now, gold dead even as we approach the 18-minute mark of this game. Rift Herald going to be available in a bit, or sorry, no, not anymore because it was just picked up here by EDG. We got the Otacon though spawning in about 2 minutes time as well. Looks like that's going to be forming on the top side here for this one, and because we only have 6 kills, I imagine we're going to be getting some revives here today.
Yeah, it certainly should be, and that would be huge to be able to pick up, specifically for EDG. What better way to make your team fights easier than to have something that allows you to take a second shot at it, not fully die if things go a little bit wrong, but both of these teams definitely going to be focusing up towards that one. LNG, they've recognized that they do not want to lose this mid lane tower, have been keeping enough members in the area to keep this push going, stop this mid lane tower from going down so far, although a reset is going to have to come through right here for Photic. Could potentially be a couple of seconds where you could try push forwards. Unfortunately, the wave just isn't there. It's a good reset timer coming through. And we've just got some nice little downtime right here. 2 items completed on Haichao. With that Manamune on him right now, this champion deals so much damage. This is a great spot to be in for Haichao. Same thing though for Angel, and that ulti is huge in terms of teamfight power.
Yeah, Haichao, the benefitter of being able to take 2 towers basically on his own in both of those last couple of exchanges on opposite sides of the map. You can see he is the one right now who is the only one with a gold lead over any of their opposing laners, and that is, I think, going to be an interesting story to watch throughout this game, how Haichao can perform. You know, this newer player who is on a team with significant expectations, I would say, for the first time in his career after being on LGD for a couple of splits. And, you know, hasn't necessarily performed to the level that that he was likely and or hopefully or probably expecting of himself. And now with a lot of money, a lot of resources given to him, he's going to be the big carry, the big difference maker here if LNG want to win this game 1.
Yeah, really needs to step up for his team. Been put in a good position so far to be able to do so. We have now got that next Drake spawning. Nobody really has set up around it though. Both of these teams are far happier to keep sitting around this mid lane, defending that mid lane tier 1 for LNG. There are a couple of deep flank wards available for LNG though, if they do want to try to play around this bottom side. And it would be huge to be able to pick yourself up this next Drake. With them currently sat at 1 apiece, this is going to be a big soul to be able to pick up. Hextech can help so much in terms of team fights, and also just give so many extra stats that you really do love to see. Right now, though, EDG far more focused around this top side of the map. Really not interested in trying to play around this Drake right now.
The Otacon is available. That's always an objective you have to keep your eye on, because even though it's not very easy to take as a especially early on in the game, if you just give it full team just a little bit too much time, that can be those revives going over essentially for free. So a lot of play right now around the top side of the map, both squads wanting to get vision around that pit. That's one of the cool things about the new change here, Bloxer. You know, depending on where a lot of the action is, you know, where the Otacon does spawn, it forces teams to play out the map in different ways every single game.
It really does. When you get a bottom lane Atacon, it changes things so much because there's almost always a Drake up at the same time, and you can end up in a situation where you're half trying to take the Drake, but also you're kind of around the Atacon, so maybe you start that one up too. Speaking of starting it up, EDG, they are going to pull the trigger. It's really difficult to pull off of Atacon. He chases you, he deals a lot of damage, and LNG are going to arrive indeed. EDG, they know that they just have to step away, allow that one to full reset, and the posturing will continue. Big push going on bot lane though. Zika has a massive wave coming in down bot side. Should be able to pick up a good chunk of this tower if he wants it, or at least force somebody to come on down to respond. Indeed, that is going to force ZDZ down here. They aren't really able to do anything with this push though. Don't pick up any damage onto the tower. Don't use it to find a way to get onto the Drake or onto the Atacon. The big push sort of just fizzles out, and it doesn't really feel like ZDZ is going to get punished for having to head down here. Not with the teleport in his back pocket.
Yeah, I mean, overall, very good usage of just starting up that buff there for Edward Gaming. They forced Haichao to use his teleport, and also ZDZ was able to get that mid lane tower that was previously attacked by the Rift Herald. He was able to finish it off and get a little bit more gold into his team's pockets, and now EDG with about a 400 gold lead, so nothing too crazy, but you know, now we're starting to see Assume at that 2-item mark with the LDR completed. Now ZDZ has his completed Fimbulwinter and is working towards a 3rd item himself. Players are starting to get very strong. This is a very big spike, I would say, for Edward Gaming if they want to potentially look to go right back to that Otacon and start it up once again. Now, on the bottom side, we have the 2 top laners duking it out. You know, they're both very tanky at this point. You do see Zika taking a little bit more damage right now. Did not utilize that ultimate and will be forced back. That could mean EDG can try to do something a little bit more offensive on the top side of the map. But right now, it's all about playing wave states correctly, making sure that nobody loses too much from an overload on one certain side. Assume, though, could be in trouble as he was spotted on a ward. There comes a way in with the Arctic Assault. He's going to stun him up alongside that Glacial Prison. Not actually going to lock him down.
Teleport.
As now a teleport comes in here for ZDZ. forced to go back and retreat, though, as Zika does join the fray as well. So both teleports were used from the top laners. Assume uses both of his summoner spells, but nobody will go down, as now LNG are the ones potentially going towards that Hextech Drake, but EDG want to make sure they have none of it as they force their way up to the top side and make LNG make a tough decision.
Yeah, you really can't afford to just give away this Artican. The Voracious is so strong, and it is going to get started up right here by EDG. Haichao is there. He's just going to spot this one out. Everybody knows that this is happening, and it takes so long to take it. Yeah, Wink is taking such a chunk.
So it forces LNG off of the Dragon at the very least, but I don't know if they're going to be able to finish off this objective. It looks like, once again, they're just going to peel off, but it seems like overall, EDG get what they want in the short term. However, now, the Otacon buff did not actually fully reset, and now it's only at 5,000 HP, and Xiaohao is going to have to make a tough choice. Does he try to go for the flip, or will he not even be able to with a big Glacial Fissure coming out from Zhuo? He's all very down, very low. The Arcane Storm doing a good amount of chunk as well. Here comes Zika, lands a Cyclone only onto Assume, and takes a big chunk in response. There comes the bullet time. It's going to burst this down, and the revives are secured by LNG. Wink goes in, but all will be for naught, as it'll just force all of LNG to head back to base, and Haichao doing as much damage as he can before he likely will eventually head back to the fountain as well. The Gatling gun doing a big chunk of damage. He will be able to get the shutdown on the Xiaohao before heading back. It's a double kill here for the Corki, and even though all 5 of LNG head back through those modified respawns, they pick up 3 kills in response.
And that's exactly what you want to do. I question a little bit the decision out of EDG to go fully in there, and we can't even talk about the fight that we just saw, because LNG on the quick reset head straight back on over to the Baron. It is recognized as happening, but 14-15 seconds until Xiaohao's back up.
Yeah, Wink gonna try to take the Hex Gate over, but Azarel not gonna really be able to do too much, and he just might find himself into a pretty sticky situation. Okay, he will be able to go back to bases. LNG have other plans, it seems like, and that could actually be attacking ZDZ and then breaking open this top tier 1 turret. And that, again, is the power of this Voracious Otacon buff. Even though you're able to, technically kill all 5 members as EDG, doesn't matter because the death timers for LNG are just way shorter due to the buff, and they make their way over to the Baron and are going to blow open this gold lead, now leading by 4,000 here in Game 1.
And this is what I'm questioning right here. The point at which you lose this Atacon, Voracious Atacon, gets taken by your opponents. There's then a full commit to going in to try and get extra kills down, try to get rid of those buffs. But Voracious was just nerfed. You now don't actually get to keep it for that long. All 5 members of EDG continue to step up. Hang on, we're going to jump straight out into a team fight.
Yeah, Zika found the initial Cyclone here, but here's the response, though, from EDG. Zhuo goes down, as Assume picks it up here with the bullet time. Now ZDZ might have called out Haichao. He's the big carry here for LNG. He's not even going to get a trade onto the Jin Zhao, and the Arcane Storm goes its way onto Photic. So LNG pick up the Baron buff, but they immediately lose 3. There's a teleport coming in from Angel to try to break open a turret on the bot side, and EDG are right back into this one.
Yeah, they managed to find themselves a huge play around that topside jungle. Now a big push right here onto this top lane tier 2. Big push heading onto the mid lane as well. They're at least going to lose this mid lane tier 2, and that's a huge injection of gold. A ton of big shutdowns picked up as well. Haichao had a massive one set on top of his head that you've now managed to collect for EDG, and they pulled this gold gap back down to just over 1,000 gold. They're also going to pick up this Hextech Drake that had been sitting here left alone, uninterested in by the teams up until this point, and it's a big swing right here after LNG felt like they'd put themselves in such a dominant position with the Baron buff, could have used it to pick up a ton of towers. We'll have a look back at how this happens, because we jumped into this one late. Good dodge out of Assume, and then everybody jumps in just the wrong situation, and this bullet time is gorgeous. It gets blocked, sure, by the Brom, but it forces everyone to turn and flee, leaves the Brom just alone, and you see the follow-up as we got. And I love the immediate teleport that comes out from Angel afterwards as well. Recognizes immediately that they need to go and push this advantage as much as possible, because this is the biggest gap, the smallest gap and the biggest advantage EDG have had pretty much throughout this entire game.
Oh man, I mean, it was neck and neck for a while. Then LNG pulled away. Now EDG answering right back. I think that's going to go to show how close of a series this could be between these two squads. Yeah, the gold graph is crazy. LNG
dead even till
they were in such a good spot.
Minutes.
Man, and it just imagine if EDG and Xiaohao were able to steal away that Otacon buff somehow. I mean, this game could have been over already. EDG could have won, but just that's how powerful that buff really ends up being. LNG pick up the Baron and at least buy themselves a little bit of time, even though this game, of course, is still far from over.
Really is. We've now got 3 items completed on quite a lot of these carries. Assume just trying to be able to cut through these big tanky members as well with that Lord Dominic's. And you can see the way that EDG want to play out this game, right? They want to get that catch onto the first initial member and then be able to blow everybody up with that bullet time. Unfortunately, the Brom is so good into it, has been able to block quite a lot of that damage. If you can potentially find yourself a pick onto Juve first and then move on to be able to find the rest of the team fight, that could be a really good way to play this one out. LNG, though, they're still in an advantage. They've still got themselves about 1,000 gold of a lead. They need to find themselves the Baron, though, to really be able to push. The wave clear is far too strong from EDG. We've seen that so far. They haven't really been able to step up to the towers. There's still 2 tier 2 towers remaining, same as their opponents, despite the fact that they had a Baron buff. ZDZ gonna get jumped.
Yeah, now Zika and Haichao looking to go on to ZDZ. Zika does have the flash if he wants to try to land a second knockup, but he's not even going to need it. ZDZ will get shut down. Haichao picking up his 4th kill of the game. Looks like on the other side, EDG will try to pick up this tier 2 in the top side, but LNG going to be happy to answer mid.
Not even going to be able to pick up this tier 2. They've just pushed the wave on under and had to pull back. Interesting, no decision to try to force down this mid lane tower here from LNG. They're going to be happy enough to just buy themselves space, put themselves in a good position in terms of pushing. I say good position in terms of pushing their advantage, but this game feels like a real good show of why, unfortunately, both EDG and LNG are the bottom 2 teams in this group. They really aren't pushing their advantages massively. Yeah. They're not using their wins for anything really big. It's a pick onto ZDZ, one of the main carries of this composition, and for it you get lane priority in 2 lanes, but no towers. That's not a massive advantage. Better teams, BLG, ThunderTalk, when they've picked themselves up a pick or 2, they've used that to great effect to push their agenda forwards, to get themselves in a better position to win, something neither of these teams feel like they've been able to quite do so far.
Yeah, and that's, you know, what both these squads, of course, are going to have to look towards in terms of improving going into split number 2. Of course, you only get this last series here for split 1. Neither of these squads going to be having the opportunity to go into that playoff bracket, as it's already been determined out of Group C. It'll be BLG and ThunderTalk. But in this series against each other, at least, we're going to try to see a little bit more decisiveness, or maybe not the case, as right now we're 13 kills, 31 minutes in. You know, I hate to make this like, I feel like it's like maybe a stereotype at this point, but it feels like we're watching an LCK game, not an LPL game.
It does. This is the least LPL game I think I've ever watched. Maybe we'll get a team fight right here.
Yeah, the Baron has spawned. Looks like right now both teams trying to control vision around the area. Pink wards for EDG placed around this topside river very, very nicely as they try to gain mid control now with Assume. In terms of big players for LNG, Haichao, nearly 3,000 gold ahead of his lane opponent and does have 4 items right now. But EDG as a whole looking very aggressive, and they're actually the ones pushing the tempo here. Xiaohao goes forward, pops the Crescent Guard, and here comes Wink with a 2-man Magnet Storm. On the other side, though, that's a flanking Corki, and Zika lands a 3-man Cyclone to try to one-shot the backline. That's Assume going down. That's Angel forced to flash away as well. The Arcane Storm doing a good chunk of damage. Not enough just yet, but ZDZ is able to pick up 2. He's able to pick up another one. He's able to pick up so many kills. That's a triple kill here for the Jace. And EDG somehow are able to run away with that fight. They get 4 kills with only Haichao standing.
What a weird, messy fight that one was. It looked like LNG had put themselves in a great spot with a flank. You had the Wukong and the Corki, the 2 massive damage carries and threats, get onto the backline, get a flank off, and you'd think that would be enough to pick up the win, but everybody is just tanky enough to be able to survive. Only Assume gets taken out, and that's after the bullet time actually comes on through. You can see it here, the Corki moving around through the top bush, has to take quite a while to get around there, but still gets into a good flanking position early on enough. Zika goes in as well, but the bullet time's already gone through, already done a decent amount of damage. And despite the fact you've got this massive flank going, you only pick up a kill onto one member. And on the backline, you're just getting taken out. Angel, despite going very low, does a huge amount with that Chaos Storm. And the fight is won from there. ZDZ picks up a lot of the kills, does a lot of the damage in that one, but it was just a mess of a fight and just an unfortunate set of angles for LNG where they needed to pick up those 3 kills onto the backline. They weren't able to do so quick enough.
Yeah, and we made it to about 33 minutes into the game before we had to mention tank Jace. You know, ZDZ hasn't done too much here in this game other than get bullied by Zika in lane. But now with that 4th completed item, he's going to be a problem for the remainder of this one. But speaking of problems, it looks like Wink is in a hell of a one as he just gets bursted down as LNG just pull up a death brush strategy of some sort. Now Zika lands a Cyclone onto ZDZ. The tank Jace not taking enough, pops the shield. The bullet time is blocked by Jvo, barely not able to take anybody down. But now Angel will pick himself up a triple kill with the Arcane Storm. That is a large ultimate, burning down LNG. Photic, the last remaining survivor. It's an ace here for Edward Gaming. They've got 3 and a wave towards mid. They might try to end this game right now.
Yeah, with 6 grubs, EDG, they're going to take down these towers very quickly. 40 seconds on the death timer, so it's a long time at this point in the game. And it's another great team fight out of EDG. Fnatic Deathbrush style. Love it when teams pull that one out. And LNG, they set that one up. That was their play. It goes wrong once again. EDG, they're going to be able to pick up game number 1 of this series.
It was a back and forth affair, but at the end, it's Edward Gaming pulling off the victory. And despite how strong Haichao was at the end of that game, it was Angel, his lane opponent, on the victor, who ends up pulling off a bit of a miracle play, just barely able to land that Arcane Storm onto 2, and as soon as that ulti grows, it just becomes an immediate problem for everybody on LNG's side. So I think we saw good stuff from both teams, Blockster, but I think the big thing is that EDG, as soon as they found that one win, they were able to make big use of it and end the game just like that.
Yeah, it took a long time for this game to really get going. 23 minutes in, these teams are barely 1,000 gold apart. All of a sudden, LNG, they managed to pull themselves out to a big lead, and then EDG pull it on back. Like you said, very impressive in the way that EDG, once they started winning team fights, were able to keep it ongoing. But it did feel like for both of these teams, advantages were not pressed until very late on. LNG, they had an early Baron, they'd picked up a ton of kills off of that initial play around the Atakan as well, and for it got nothing. I mean, a tower, not enough to have been able to pick up. I think part of that was giving over all 6 grubs. It just made taking these towers so much slower than it would otherwise have been. They lost out onto the Herald as well, so they were having some struggles with picking up towers in the first place. Kind of short range carries for trying to take down the towers too, and it just meant that they weren't able to push their advantage and gave EDG enough time to be able to get themselves into a good position to pull it back. Like you mentioned, the tank Jace really came online, was almost unkillable. Same thing with the Xin Zhao, and then all of a sudden you've got this great wombo combo teamfight composition that's fully functional, fully online, and LNG, they just couldn't stand up to it.
Yeah, we were wondering, is the front line for EDG going to be enough? Well, by the end of the game, definitely ended up being the case because of all the range damage that Xiao Hao was able to block here with the Crescent Guard, and also Tank Jace really coming alive towards the end of that one. You saw Assume and Angel really have their best team fights at the end of that game, and as you said, Bloxer, in the draft of this one, you know, you just need that one wombo combo fight. And that's all they needed to end this game. And for LNG, a team with so many expectations coming in, maybe not as high as they were when they had Scout and Gala on the team, but still, I think a team that was hoping to maybe sneak into that top conversation here in the LPL. That's now their 7th straight game loss in a row. We'll see if they can bounce back from this one as we take a break going into Game 3. But before we do so, just a reminder that, I forgot about that. We have some post-game stuff. We're going to show some highlights and things like that as well. Oh, man. It's my first time on in a couple weeks. I'm forgetting the flow of things a little bit. We have our player of the game, some of our post-game graphics as well. So we'll stay around and continue to talk about this game here as we go forward.
Player of the game. I think is a really interesting conversation right here, because there were a lot of key members in this one. ZDZ, despite the fact that you had a pretty rough time of it in the early stages, was able to come online and really have a pop-off performance later on. Angel, by the end, was dealing just horrific amounts of damage to LNG. There was nothing LNG could do in the face of that ulti. I really don't know which way I would want to go with that full MVP.
Well, take a look at the damage charts. It actually was Angel leading the way. I imagine a lot of that comes towards the back half of that game. The Arcane Storm on the Victor, as soon as you pick up one kill, it just continues to grow and grow and grow. That's a very, very powerful ability. Of course, one of the ones that they did rework here with the visual update as well. Take a look at some of the other numbers here. I think overall, just a very highly competitive game between these two squads. But again, it was just EDG that got the right fight at the right time, and we're able to run away here with this game #1 win.
Yeah, you can see it in the kill percentages right here. Kill participation being that high, especially on mid laners, really tells you that this was a game where a lot of the kills came in team fights, not in individual lanes. There weren't a lot of ganks. There were very few ganks overall. There was one top lane that managed to pick up a kill, but that was pretty much the end of real ganks. It was all about the objectives. It was all about what you can do in these team fights. We'll see some highlights of it here as well. And there were a lot of bullet times that sort of didn't end up hitting in those key moments, but as we set up, just one really needs to happen. We got to see that one later on in the game. This felt like the turning point, though. This felt like the point of which, hey, LNG have taken over this game. This is now their game to lose. Indeed, they did, but it was a great setup for them where they were able to pull everybody from EDG up towards this Atakan, kind of in a bad spot, managed to get that take onto it, and then EDG go in what was a little bit of an odd situation, give over a couple kills, lose the Baron. Now LNG are in a big, strong lead in this situation. Yeah,
and then they think that they might have a pick here on to assume that could potentially end the game if the fight goes their way, but a lot of space here bought by Zhaohao, and the bullet time coming through, as you mentioned. Tank Jace coming into play here a little bit as well, and that was LNG's turning point back against them, I guess. This is where EDG were able to grab control of this game once again. And you can see even in this fight here, despite them being even, if not maybe even down a little bit in gold, they're the ones actually playing aggressive.
They are stepping up, trying to find themselves this big play, and it works. EDG are able to find this win. This was the big one that they were able to pull out in the end. And it was just a flank that didn't work. Just the massive amounts of damage coming out from Angel at that point in the game as well. And it felt like what we've been missing from EDG. These were some great team fights. These were some team fights where they chose to be proactive and it worked out. But we did also see the flip side of it in this one, where they jump in and just lose their support immediately. But luckily at this point in the game, they're kind of far enough ahead in gold that you're able to win this team fight out and then turn it into the victory.
Yeah, and you can see right there, the Braum is picked to block this misfortune a lot of the time. Haichao was not able to get a lot of support from Zhou in that one. Ate almost all of the bullet time, and then Angel just had to press the R key to pick himself up a free double kill, and that basically did it in terms of the fight. In terms of player of the game, though, I thought maybe watching back the highlights could have peeled away a little bit more for who I would have picked. I still don't really know. I think I would go with maybe ZDZ because of how impactful he was in those two team fights that helped turn the game, but he didn't do too much in that last fight. So I'm curious to see what the audience decides here.
Yeah, I feel like Angel maybe just about would get that player of the game from me. I thought it was a very impressive performance from him in the end, but like, it was close. Everybody had to contribute to this one. There was no one player that popped off, took over the entire game, got their pentakill or whatever. Instead, it was very much a full team effort out of EDG, as it needed to be, as we've been really hoping to get to see from this team. We'll get the actual player of the game in a couple of minutes' time. I don't know who they're going to go for. I really don't.
Here we go. Let's see. It's going to be Angel. Okay, so looks like you're right on that one. A lot of damage dealt. Interesting that he wins player of the game despite being down 2,000 gold at the end of the game to his lane opponent. Haichao had himself a pretty good performance as well, but he was the one who ended up winning that last team fight for them, placing that Arcane Storm down, picking up that double kill, and just being really big in these later game fights.
He was the main carry in the end, because you are blocking so much of this Misfortune's damage with that Braum shield. It makes it pretty tricky to be able to play that one out for the Misfortune. That is not the same thing right here for the Victor. You're able to step up, and Angel was able to survive through these team fights very effectively as well. You have to be able to weave through this kind of composition. Otherwise, you're going to get killed. Very squishy, very immobile. You can see he got jumped by Votic in this one. This was actually the back end of a team fight that we weren't really watching. We were watching what was happening around the chickens at this point. Just about lives. Odyssey was surviving and getting out of a lot of these plays on just slivers of HP, but is just dropping the ults in such good situations. This is another example of that one. I agree with this being an MVP. It was a close one. Everybody did incredibly well and deserves a lot of praise for the outcome, but Angel was a key contributing factor right here, and yeah, is going to pick up that MVP for this game. Looking forwards though, obviously with Fearless, everything has to change in terms of the draft. As EDG though, I want to see them keep playing these teamfighter style compositions. It's the only composition I've seen them pick up wins on, and I'd be very suspect if they decide to move away from that.
We'll see if that easy to execution style is able to carry over in a situation where all 5 of those champions have to be different. So that's going to do it for our coverage of this first game. But just as a reminder to you, we at LPL English are broadcasting series every single day of the week. It's a lot of work here for a lot of the production staff and all of us talent as well. But luckily, thanks to support from Coffee subscribers, fans have donated over 70 coffees to help keep us, but all running on time and keeping you all wired and ready. Since this is a fan-run broadcast, we rely on subscribers from Coffee to YouTube and Twitch to support the stream. So if you subscribe, you can also unlock perks like early access to content and access to exclusive channels in our Discord server. You can join with a link that I'm sure is being spammed in the chats right now, and we will see you on the other side for the Game 2 draft. Welcome back, everybody, to the LPL Split 1 group stage here presented to you by LPL English. We've got EDG taking on LNG and Edward Gaming picking up the first game of this best of 5. Grapes alongside Black Boxer here for you guys, and overall, very back and forth game number 1. EDG able to come away with this, and now all pressure on LNG, who have lost 7 straight games since picking up that first matchup against Thundertalk to start off their season. So it's been all downhill from there, and you know, it's a short season, but you definitely think that they would love to bounce back and at least get some sort of momentum here to right the ship before the end of their season.
Absolutely, they would love it and we would love it too. We would love to get to see that full best of 5, tons of crazy interesting picks. We'll have to wait and see though, because EDG felt like they were able to come out swinging in that first game. It was kind of quiet for the first 25 minutes, but once EDG managed to get that 3-item spike, they were just able to win out on top of the whole rest of the game. Like you said, LNG, they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. You're forced to anyway because of Fearless, and there's now a ton of really high priority pickups that are just gone. You're not allowed to pick up anymore. Specifically, the fact that you were deciding to take the Wukong into the top lane means that that is now completely off of the board, and that's a few of the really just big champions that we have been seeing in the jungle gone already, off of the board.
Yeah, that's another benefit of playing this Fearless style and playing something a little bit more creative like Wukong in that top lane. You could take away not just the Sejuani, but also the Wukong away from Xiao Hao for the remainder of this series. Still a lot of very strong junglers, I should say, though, still on the board. Things like the Viego, the Vi. We've seen both of these players, you know, whip out the Lee Sin from time to time as well. I would imagine if we get later into that series, both of these guys are going to have that high on their priority list. But overall for LNG, I mean, in terms of things that worked for them, Haichao had a great game on the Corki, but I think specifically, like, I'm thinking of players that, you know, I don't remember much of from that series, and it was Photic and Joel down in the bottom lane here, almost invisible throughout the entire series, just never really able to dish out a ton of damage or do a lot in terms of their output, especially in those team fights.
No, the way that the composition from LNG wanted to play out, you get a long-range pick onto somebody with either your Sejuani ulti or those Virus Chains of Corruption. Like you said, Photic, Weiwei, they didn't really play together very much. They didn't find those long-range picks really at any big point, and it meant that the composition just didn't work out. I would love to see Photic and Zhou on some slightly more aggressive pickups in the bottom lane. They have played it. They played themselves a Kalista Nico game, I think in their win, actually, versus Thundertalk, and that looked great. That was really fun to see. Very aggressive, certainly not invisible like they were in the previous game. So hopefully Photic and Zhou, they can get a little bit more going on in that bot lane. I'd still like to see something aggressive for Haichao in the mid lane, though. Like you said, there's plenty still available. We're still very early on. Something I'd love to see at some point is the Yone.
Yeah, and you know, for somebody like Photic down there in the bot lane for LNG, the last few years of his career, the first few years of his career, I should say, like, was always paired alongside another very strong carry player, that being Rookie, who's one of the best players of all time, especially here in the LPL. And he was able to have some pretty solid performances. I think he got All-Pro a couple of years ago, but now with his other carry being maybe a bit more of a greener player like Haichao, I think this LNG roster was expecting a lot more from Photic than we've seen from him, specifically at the start of the 2025 season. So getting him maybe on something with a little bit more agency could be good. However, with EDG swapping over to the red side, they do not want to see Photic on that Kalista pick that you were suggesting. That, as well as the Skarner, are taken away early on.
Yeah, EDG going to be forced on over to the red side after that victory, and LNG very happy about that one, happy to not have to ban away some of these high priority pickups. They actually banned the Kalista in the previous round as well, clearly think that's going to be a very important pickup. And so LNG, first pick, what do they have available to them? The Rumble has been something we've been seeing from a lot of the LPL teams recently. It is incredibly strong, should be in the hands of Zika, and in terms of champions in which he can get some solo kills and start to win his lane individually and hopefully take over the rest of the map for his team, this is a great one.
Yeah, very strong, you know, blind pick, especially with things like the Cassante taken away. Always the answer, though, being that Galio. I'd imagine ZDZ is just going to lock that one in, follow the Rumble around the top side. A lot of good magic damage, magic damage reduction on the kit. It should be a very good thing overall, and also provides a lot of good team fighting, which is, again, what we want to see from EDG in these drafts. Easy to execute ways to engage and start fights. The Nocturne from Xiao Hao, answers a lot of those same questions as well.
It does. It just means that this pairing between a Galio and a Nocturne is crazy. Everywhere that you pick up a fight as LNG, you have to expect that it's going to be a 5v5 because everybody can join in onto this fight. Full dogpile your way on in. It's the sort of team fighting composition that EDG have been looking good on, and that I was very excited for them to pick up. LNG, the response, though, is going to go towards this Viego, and this is a very different composition where, sure, they can team fight well between the Rumble and this Viego, but you're a lot squishier, you're a lot more reliant on picking up that first kill to get that unlock for Weiwei to then be able to play out the rest of this team fight. LNG, they're going to need some heavy front line at some point if they want to make this one work.
It's going to be the Azir locked in here for Haichao. We'll see what Angel wants to respond with. I'd imagine that EDG select mid lane here to round out their first phase and just allow the bot lanes to go all the way down. I was thinking even the Akali could be a possibility just because it's that natural counter. Hasn't been as meta this split, but again, with it being fearless, you always have the opportunity to whip out some more of these pocket picks.
Give it a go. I think it would work really well alongside the Galio and the Nocturne too.
There it is.
You can follow them great. You can also get very aggressive into the bot lane potentially and just turn bot lane into a party house for EDG. Get everybody involved. See what you can do. If we're looking for Photic and Joe to be able to step up to try to find a win for LNG, well then this is a great way of stamping that out for EDG. It isn't necessarily a lot of particularly immobile carries right now for LNG, so it's going to be a tricky game to play out for Angel right now, but you've got a great matchup in the mid lane, and then you can transition that into the mid to late game, hopefully, and find great success on this champion.
And so now we are looking at the bottom lanes here to round out this draft. Again, we touched on Photic's performance specifically. Are there any champions that like stick out to you as still being available? I know right now like Jinx is not necessarily as high priority, but in terms of just easy to execute team fights, maybe for somebody like EDG, having a high DPS AD carry that can really pop off later in the game might be a good fit for them.
Yeah, I think the Jinx could be really interesting right here. I think the Jinx could work really well on LNG as well. It always pairs up nicely with the Viego where, hey, if you get the first kill in any given team fight, you've won that team fight. That's a great way to be able to play those ones out. In terms of other things I'm looking towards in this bot lane, I think the Ashe could be interesting. We've not seen it quite as much recently. It used to be that B1 in every game pickup, not quite so much of a priority champion at the moment, but it does give you a lot of long-range snipe support to attempt to get on top of people. It can work really well alongside things like the Nocturne too, although it would be a little bit risky in this sort of game where there's a lot of backline dive that could definitely threaten onto something like the Ashe.
I always like to bring this up. You know, Wink used to be an AD carry player as well. Played a couple of Ashe support games last split, actually, when he was here with EDG still. So always could be an option as well, as there's that champion that you were mentioning hovered and potentially locked in here. So I don't imagine that being a flex, especially just with how strong it's been in the AD carry position all season. But always the possibility of somebody who's played the AD carry role in the past whipping something out and maybe being a little bit more flexible.
Absolutely, and I really like this Ezreal hover right here. I think into a champion like the Akali, you do not want to pick yourself up in a mobile carry. That's why the Xayah was banned out right there for EDG, because they don't want you to be able to just jump up into the ulti and get away. The Ezreal, though, can do something very similar, and paired up with the Leona, that's a bot lane that can get some extra kills going on. I would love to see this Renata right here. You're into a composition that wants to run at you. Something that can stop that from happening would always be great. Right now, though, EDG, they're going to hover through quite a lot of different options. They've got plenty available to them. The support role was not focused down too much. You only lost things like the Rakan and the Nico. And it is going to be a lock-in right here of the Nautilus. Nautilus fits into almost every composition. He's never a particularly bad choice. And he can do a lot of the same things as the Renata, where you can stop things like the Leona and the Viego from just being able to run at you. But this is a very pick-orientated composition right here from EDG. They're looking to catch somebody out with that Enchanted Crystal Arrow, and then from that, you dogpile on them with everybody, take that person out, and then you're in a 4v5, play the team fight from there.
Yeah, you got Ashe ult, Nautilus ult, Nocturne ult, and then Galio ult can just go on top of everybody as well. Like, team fighting's still solid, I would say, here for EDG, but the main focus is going to be finding those picks, finding those early engages, and even really diving onto this backline of LNG. I think that's why you saw them take away things like the Poppy and the Xayah in that second phase, not wanting things that can potentially stifle that in any capacity. But I think overall, on the other side, LNG have a decent draft set up for themselves as well. Maybe a little bit more flexible in terms of being able to go forward and backwards a little bit. I'm interested to see the interaction here between the solo laners. Can Haichao and Zika set themselves up with nice ultimate synergies and things like that, and allow for Weiwei to get those resets on the Viego? They're going to need it if they want to pick up their first win in, I think, over 3 weeks at this point. LNG really struggling as of late, and they want to turn things around here at their home stadium to get things back on the right track as we wrap up split number 1.
Everything rests, I feel like, on this game. If you can get that momentum of the second game, the 8th loss in a row for LNG, it's going to feel so very tricky for them to be able to overcome that and actually pick themselves up a win. And EDG would love that momentum going into game number 3. LNG, though, they've got themselves a great composition to be able to step up in this game. They got a comp that can work great on picks as well as on the team fights. There's some great interactions. Oh my lord, that is gorgeous. There's some great interactions between a Leona and a Rumble. We'll have to see if that comes off, or if we're just going to see a little bit more of a slow game early on, as we did last time.
Man, I'm just taken away by that sky cam. That was beautiful.
So
we're still celebrating the Lunar New Year even after the break here. You know, it's Riot promoting some of the skin lines that they're using as well, and it's a really nice way to showcase some of the amazing graphics and production teams here on the LPL broadcast as well. Looks like EDG starting things off with a little bit of an invade, getting some deep vision into LNG's bot side jungle. Looks like right now LNG did not do much of the same on the other side, so Weiwei is going to be in full vision once he starts up those bottom side camps.
Yeah, knowing exactly where this Viego is going to be very important, because if you can get a couple ganks going with this champion, he can get so strong so quickly, threaten onto this Ashe incredibly easily, and the Ashe is going to be under massive threat. Assume's going to have to play this one out very carefully. You aren't exactly going to get jumped by an Akali, so it's slightly easier in this game. But in terms of champions that can get into the backline, that can make your life miserable, there are a good couple, and Haichao, if he can get a couple big shuffles off in those later game team fights, Assume's going to have to hope he's got that flash available to him. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very tricky to play this one out. So far, we're not going to get any interesting lane swaps or anything. You wouldn't expect it necessarily with these lanes, but, you know, some teams have been going for them in all situations anyway. And in this 2v2 that we're watching down in the bottom lane right now, you expect the early advantage to go towards LNG, but at the same time, if you get jumped by an Ashe Nautilus combo, it's almost impossible to get away. The CC between them is insane.
Yeah, you're almost like forced to fight forward and just try to kill one of them, I guess, because if you try to run away, they're just going to be peppering you in the back with the slows and all the crowd control from the Nautilus as well. So looks like right now, though, it was Photo Control that were able to hit level 2 first. Able to crash that wave underneath the turret. And not too much else in terms of aggression down here in the bottom lane, as both junglers are pathing down there. And I think now, you know, at least Xiaohao is aware of that because of the vision that was set up earlier.
We'll have to see if EDG actually want to go for this early gank. They can, because of the early aggressive push coming out of the LNG bot lane. And picking up a couple of kills here would be a great way to kick this game off. The rest of our lanes so far also going to be sitting pretty chill. Nothing too much interesting happening in these lanes, and I don't expect to see too many solo kills. They can happen in this mid lane matchup. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that you could pick up a solo kill on this Akali, but it is very tricky to do so, and you have to make sure you pick the right situation, because if you ever jump in too far as the Akali when the Viego's in the area, that's a great way to get yourself killed instead.
Oh, really nice hawk
Great
shot
spot.
from Assume. Spots out Weiwei. Seems like Xiaohao and EDG knew that would be the timer where Viego could maybe try to come for a bit of a gank. But it does force Xiaohao to go towards the top side of the map instead to take that Scuttle Crab and even up the camp score. Looks like Weiwei going to go back to base, as there's really not much to fight for with a wave not in the best spot right now here for LNG.
Now, a dive this early on up against a Nautilus and an Ashe would be a death sentence for yourself. No point in doing that. It also looked like Xiaohao was fully aware of the fact that there was going to be a Weiwei in the bot lane, didn't want to go for that 1v1 or turn it into a 3v3 skirmish, and so already was pathing up towards the top side of the map at the point at which that hawk shot came through and was able to fully spot out where Weiwei was. And now with the reset having come on through for Weiwei, he's looking towards the top side of the map. There's no vision right here, and ZDZ is very pushed up.
Yeah, does hit level 5, so does have the advantage right now over Zika, who very smartly goes in front of ZDZ to make sure he cannot Justice Punch away. The taunt only going to land onto Weiwei as ZDZ in a whole lot of trouble, and it's going to be first blood for the Viego and LNG.
It felt like a formality, that kill. Once you're that pushed up with no vision, sure, maybe ZDZ could have tried to flash Justice Punch away, but it would have been such a risk to just lose a Summoner spell and still end up dying. And the kill picked up right there by Weiwei. Great champion to get that early first blood onto. I was interested to see if they were going to give it over to Zika or to Weiwei. I think either would have been a decent opportunity, but Weiwei taking it means that he can then take that early advantage and spread it to the rest of the map. Try to improve the chances of the bot lane potentially, the mid lane too if you want to go that way. And also, we've got our first Drake spawned already, and it is going to be an Infernal. That's usually a juicy one for teams. Teams often like to send a couple members up to that one, so potentially the extra advantage for Weiwei could be helpful there as well.
Well, it looks like EDG is trying to make some lemonade out of the lemons that they were given with that first blood given over. They send their bot lane to the top side of the map immediately after ZDZ goes down, who the Galio teleporting down to the bot side. He should be able to make his way up to a grub fight if deemed necessary once he dings level 6 with that hero's entrance. So that is the trade that they decided to make. And they're going to really try to hard force these grubs, much like they did in game number 1.
It worked out so very well. The early aggression onto the grubs led to so much damage on towers that it felt almost impossible for LNG to really keep up. And we see the bot lanes now moving up mid as well. Assume this is going to be able to push out onto Zika, but I think right now, mid lane, yeah, teleport coming through too. We might well see a full 5v5 around these grubs, which would be a crazy way to kick off this game, but I wouldn't put it past either of these teams. It's the kind of decision-making that we have come to expect. Angel, do not step into that bush.
Yeah, I mean, EDG might think that they're just on the grubs right now. Thankfully for Angel, looks like Xiaohao is going to check that out himself, start the grubs up at least a little bit, and you're right, Bloxer. All 10 players on the top side of the map trying to pick up some sort of semblance of control around this grub pit. LNG picking up the first one, as it is Weiwei who secures that one with his smite. And now we'll see, do EDG want to go in, or will they actually just give these 3 objectives up? Remember, they were the ones who initiated this play by sending their bot lane to the top side, but they're just happy enough to give away all 3 grubs without getting much in response.
Such an odd play. Like you said, moved their bot lane up. So you have fully indexed into trying to pick up these grubs, and then don't decide to go fight for them. Clearly didn't think they were going to be in a strong enough position to actually win out onto that team fight. But it means bot lane's been sat uncontested alone for the last couple minutes. Wink might get caught right here. He's going to step up.
Bit of a hairy situation here for Wink and Xiaohao. They are very lucky that that Zenith Blade went wide from Zhou. Otherwise, that could have been a bit of a problem. Enchanted Crystal Arrow, though, does connect. And Zika, he teleported away before anybody. He really knew that that arrow was going to hit. The hero's entrance comes in. ZDZ picks up the kill. And EDG equalized the score at 1 for now.
Now they're potentially looking for a dive right here. Assume slowly going to be pushing this wave in. All 5 members of EDG have roamed up. It means free pushes on the rest of the map, but can you get the kills?
I mean, this has to work for EDG, otherwise they're going to lose a lot in terms of just pure waves on both the mid and the bottom lane. Hex Slash in from Wink. The target immediately should be Photic, who gets chunked down and bursted here by the Shuriken of Angel, and he perfectly executes out to safety. Here's the re-engage, though. Haichao misses everybody with the Emperor's Divide. And that could have been a big turnaround for LNG underneath their tower, but Haichao unable to convert.
Oof, yeah, that one feels a little bit rough right there. It was tricky for Haichao. You know, if he did go fully flying in, there was a potential situation in which he was just giving a 3rd kill over to EDG. But that does give EDG that feat. The feat of warfare has just been picked up. And it all comes off the back of this brilliant snipe play right here. Now, I hope that we see this again and again and again, because this is the bread and butter of this EDG composition. It's a full pick comp where you're looking to just throw out that enchanted crystal arrow and fully dogpile whoever is on the back end of this play. Now, as this dive is happening, you can see Haichao pushes through the mid wave and then leaves it. Doesn't decide to take turret plates for himself. Doesn't decide to push the advantage mid lane. Instead, heads on up towards this top lane. Then this happens. And it unfortunately means that it takes a play that was already good from EDG and makes it even better, because you don't get that extra advantage in the mid lane that you could have otherwise been pushing. at least Zika stayed bot lane and got to push there.
I mean, yeah, when Zika, that teleport completed, it kind of signed off the death warrants of Vodok and Joe. I really do think, though, if Haichao was able to flash ulti and maybe send some members back underneath the tower, I mean, Weiwei was waiting for him underneath that tier 1. Could have been able to at least pick up a couple of kills in response, but that was a tough play here for Haichao. Again, a player who didn't have a ton of expectations early on in his career, but now in a situation here on LNG is going to need to step up heading into Split 2 if they want any semblance of returning back to the World Championship. Now Angel in a 2v1 does take a turret shot and will have to dash away, so just a little bit of a trade to try and get that wave underneath the tower.
And it takes a play that was not ideal already and makes it worse, right? And that's unfortunately something that's been happening for LNG quite a lot, where I don't disagree with the decision making. I don't disagree that you bring your Azir up. Like I said, the flash ulti play could have been huge, but because it goes wrong, because it's mis-executed, then all of a sudden you've lost out on some extra power in your own lane because of the play. Either way, at the end of the play, we're still basically dead even in terms of gold. Nobody's picked themselves up that first Drake. This is turning into a bit of a theme.
Yeah, nobody likes dragons anymore. Not the grubs are around, Otacons are around. It seems like people kind of forget about that objective, at least earlier on in the game. It seems like you're a bit of a dragon enthusiast, by the way. You're.
I love it. I think fights around the dragon are the most fun. Because it doesn't deal a lot of damage, like a Baron or an Atacon does. It can't follow you around. It's much quicker to take. I think it causes teams to go in for really quick, interesting little flash plays, and the way you set up about them is so fun. Clearly, both of these teams disagree. They're not interested even slightly. Instead, like you said, grubs are the new shiny toy. And they are about a year old at this point. One was stolen away by Zhao, clearly happy with that, just not giving over another one of the feats from it. And it is going to be 2 more grubs picked up. So 5-1 for LNG. They're going to be able to push these towers that much more effectively. Something that, to be honest, they didn't even need. This is a great composition for taking towers in the first place. Going to make that much easier. And once again, EDG, they have now got themselves in a situation where they've got a very short-range composition without the grubs. They're going to make taking these towers quite tricky to do. We are seeing a couple of pings around the Drake right now for EDG. They do have 4 members in the area. Could potentially move on over to try to pick that one up. Also looking to do what they can to try to pick up this first tower. Although, yeah, just going to get that wave yoinked away from them by Zika.
Oh my, why is Angel level 8? Okay, Jesting's level 9. Oh, dodges away from the Emperor's Divide. Now going to go back in. Oh my god, styling on him, Angel. You're down 20 CS, man, and down a full level, but you know what? Respect.
The button presses are nice, though. They're going to roam up a 3rd member, LNG, to potentially try for this. He is. That was gorgeous, to be fair. And Wink is also going to join in. That's going to dissuade this dive for the most part. You really don't want to be diving into a Nautilus right now. And that's quite a lot blown, quite a lot of time invested top lane for no reward for LNG, whilst at the same time they're losing a ton of tower damage bot lane, and they lost out onto that first Drake. First Drake does finally fall. EDG are going to be able to pick that one up for themselves. It's now 1 apiece in terms of that feat of the objectives, but it doesn't matter. It's just going to be the feat going over right here to EDG. They're going to be able to pick up 2 of those. Nice early game so far for EDG. Exactly what we were hoping for from them.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, Bloxer. I think LNG look very lost at this point in the game. I mean,
great work.
They've tried to send a lot of people to the top side. They've tried to control the grubs this game because they remember last time they gave up 6 grubs and it did not end up working out for them. But Angel is just, you know, distracting them kind of with all of his flashy moves, and with EDG, they've done a really good job of actually overloading certain sides of the map, particularly the bot lane this time around. ZDZ was able to get like 5 full plates basically on his own down there in the bottom lane, just with all the pressure that Xiao Hao and Wink were able to put and help him out with.
And so what can LNG do to really find their way back into this game? And I think it comes down to the bread and butter of this composition that we've said before. Assume needs to be hitting those enchanted crystal arrows. A couple tricky members to try to land it onto, but also if you can hit one blind, that would be huge as well. Once you've got that initial pick, I think it's going to make this decision making so much harder to do. So LNG, where do you go in for these fights, right? If you're constantly getting these enchanted crystal arrows thrown at you, landing potentially, and all of a sudden you're in 4v5s, you can't really play those ones out. I think they need to find themselves a little bit more deep vision, potentially, and also some extra setup around these Drakes. Objectives. Not just roam multiple members up to them, but just get themselves the vision around it, get to these objectives even earlier in an attempt to just stop looking lost, like you said.
Because if they get to objectives first, they'll be able to throw out their ultimates aggressively instead of maybe as a defense with one of them getting caught out. And you can't get caught when all 5 of you are kind of sitting together in the same location. Speaking of getting caught out, Angel maybe in a little bit of trouble here. He's able to dash away here with the shuriken flip and take himself back to safety. No objectives on the map just yet. We see that Rift Herald spawning in just about over a minute. So you see Joao and the rest of LNG trying to control vision around this top side of the map. Imagine that, I don't really see a world where there's too much of a hard contest around this Rift Herald. It doesn't seem to be the most highly valued objective either, as it looks like maybe that next one that we look for is the Drake down the bottom side.
Well, you'd say that, right? You'd think that the next objective that we'd see a lot of pressure around would be the Drake. Have to see if that actually pans out, because both of these teams, as we've been saying, haven't particularly been interested in actually going for that objective. Potentially the next thing they actually end up really trying to play around will be this Herald. It seemed to be these topside objectives are a lot more interesting. That's why the Atakan's going to be spawning up there too. Nobody's really fought around this bottom side of the map so far at all. All of the kills we've been seeing have been around top lane skirmishes or fights or picks. With the Herald spawning in just 20 seconds time, we're getting resets coming through. Xiao Hao gonna head back to base. We'll be able to rejoin a teamfight very quickly with the ultimate, of course. And we haven't actually seen the paranoia be used in a big way so far. And that's something that can, feel a little bit bad. EDG, obviously, they're in a good spot, but you want to be using that paranoia as often as possible. It's such a strong tool, but both these teams seem very reticent to fight.
Oh, wow. You see Assume and Photic just trading blows a little bit here, trying to gain control over this mid lane. As now Xiao Hao and Wink in that bush in the lane, looking to get around that pit first, as it looks like you're right, Bloxer. They will be trying to contest this Herald. At least EDG will, as they're the ones to start it up. But just a threat of potentially getting picked off with an Enchanted Crystal Arrow or the Paranoia coming out from Xiao Hao is enough for LNG to play more on the defensive. The Dredge line just lands on the Joe, who's able to pop the Eclipse and keep himself rather healthy. Not a ton of follow-up, specifically from the solo laners. You see ZDZ making his way down to try to push another wave towards the bot side, but LNG, they're deciding that this is now their move as Zika is walking up.
Yeah, with 5 members in the area, definitely could be a good situation right now. ZDZ, he is on his way though, and will have that ulti.
Here.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Hawkshot just got everybody in vision here for LNG, and Zika gets caught up by the arrow and shut down to start off the fight, and it'll be 2 kills immediately here as Assume is able to pick up the second. Angel dashes forward, able to dash back out. The burn, not enough to take the Akali down, as it'll just be 2 free kills for EDG and full control around the Rift Herald.
Or at the point at which we were able to see the health bar again, it was 80 remaining health right there for Angel, just about going to be able to squeak away with that one. But that's exactly what we were just talking about, right? LNG, they need to be careful of not being caught out by that Enchanted Crystal Arrow into everything combo. We get to see it once again. The hero's entrance is gorgeous as another piece of follow-up, and the kills are going exactly where you want them to. And the setup for this is just not right out of LNG. They don't have good vision. Just about gets sniped out, and the Flash has to use it.
You can't flash backwards.
No.
You can't flash in a straight line.
You have to flash sideways. You can't just move straight on into it. And you can see another one of those shuffles goes wide. Angel potentially gets a little bit too close right here. I'm shocked that he didn't get taken out. There's a Storm Surge as well on Haichao. Sorry, no, there's a Liandry, sorry, on Haichao. That should have been enough to burn him down, you'd think, but just not quite. A little bit lucky right there for Angel, but so far, EDG, they've just been playing these team fights better, and when you're playing out better, the luck often does come to you. They pick up the Rift Herald, going to be able to put it down in the mid lane as well. Potentially pick themselves up this mid lane tier 1. Not quite going to go for that one. Instead, peel back to take themselves this second Drake of the game. Everything right now coming up EDG.
And remember, you were saying earlier how LNG, they have to be the ones to start off the fights. They got to be at the objectives first. Yep. They kind of half listened to you. They sent up Zika early, but they seemed very indecisive in terms of whether they really wanted to start up the Rift Herald or not. I mean, compared to something like the Otacon, the Rift Herald did not do nearly as much damage. I feel like there's not a ton of threat that you're really posing to yourself by just starting that objective up and forcing EDG to come to you, or at the very least, allow that hawk shot to spot you all out in the pit instead of, potentially singling out Zika like it did right there.
We posed the question at the top of the day, right? After the 2-week gap that all of these teams have had, what has changed? What have LNG been able to change around across the course of a couple weeks of practicing, of talking about things, and hopefully having some rest as well? I think, unfortunately, the answer is not a lot. Lost, unsure. All of these words we're using to describe LNG's playstyle is exactly why they are in the 0-2 position that they're in right now. It's been the story of this split so far. EDG, on the other hand, have had real trouble with team fighting, and obviously LNG aren't exactly a BLG or a Thunder Talk right now. They're not quite up to that level, well, not at all in terms of BLG, we'll say. But still, the way they've been playing out these team fights, the way they've been playing more aggressive has been really good to see. It's been nice to see this change out of EDG, and it's just unfortunate that LNG, they just don't seem to have that next level to step to quite yet.
I mean, you talk about expectations. I would say going into the season, before, of course, we saw Thunder Talk beat LNG during the Demacia Cup. Like, if you looked at these 4 teams, you'd say, okay, obviously BLG makes it out, and then you would probably slot LNG in there as that second seed, presumably. But that really just has not been the case. It's looking like they could potentially end up as the worst team out of these 4 in the group. That I don't think was anything that people were expecting out of this squad. Again, 2 of the 5 members were at Worlds last season together, and you had an established bot lane, an exciting new mid lane prospect coming in. Just really has not added up so far for LNG, and they're gonna have to do a lot of inside or a lot of thinking between these splits if they want to improve and potentially put themselves in a better position for split 2.
Absolutely. There's not a lot of League of Legends left to be played in this split, but there is a lot left this year, and this first split is often a bit of a warm-up, so we'll have to see what they can do to change it. Photic is currently being hunted right now. Pretty hard to jump an Ezreal, so they don't try, but they do at least put enough pressure down to be able to pick up that mid lane tier 1 tower. Now getting some decent damage, some decent push onto this tier 2 as well. Not helped by the fact they don't have all of the grubs, but still easy enough to be able to bully members out right now when EDG are in such a strong position. They're up by about 4,000 gold. They've got 2 Drakes in their back pockets as well. Atakan has spawned. It will be Voracious again because, well, we really haven't had a lot of action so far in this game. And we'll have to see if it's going to be the same sort of story, because it was around Atakan in Game 1 that things were really cracked wide open.
Yeah, and that put things back into LNG's control. However, that Atakan fight in Game number 1, gold was about even. Now EDG finds himself up about 3,000, and it's very evenly distributed amongst everybody on the squad. You see Angel picking up that needlessly large rod as he's working towards, I believe, to be a Shadow Flame here for that second item. You see the second item, Hurricane, also picked up here for Assume, do a lot of AoE damage in the team fight. So really think that EDG is in a good position to even potentially start this up, and that is exactly what they are going to do.
Yeah, they've once again left themselves ZDZ on the Galio down in the mid lane, is able to push this one through, will be able to join the team with that hero's entrance. And we've said repeatedly, LNG are not a good composition right here to be walking into the opponent's world. They're going to be forced to do that. You really don't want to just give up this buff for free.
About half HP. Zika does have the teleport, but immediately Wink is going to go in here and land the Depth Charge onto 2. Solar Flare is splashed away from. Here comes the Paranoia. Only right now Zhuo in a lot of trouble. Zika teleports in and immediately has to flash away. Now stuck in a 1v5. Gets locked up by the taunt. The Equalizer not doing nearly enough. And the Otacon will reset, but it will come at the cost of Zika's life. LNG lose 1 and are now struggling to gain control here in the top side.
As long as you don't believe that LNG can just start up this Atakan, this is a great play for EDG to just do it again. You are more than happy to keep on walking into these team fights as long as you get to the team fight first, as EDG certainly did in this one. It's so tricky to step up, and we've seen once again LNG try, and it just does not work out. It's the same. It's the exact same play, and hang on, there's a teleport coming in right now for the picture-in-picture. Everything seems fine. This TP
very aggressive.
It's way too far forwards. I like the idea if your team is winning the team fight, and the issue with the new teleport is that it takes so long to come through that the point at which you are able to actually arrive in this team fight, insta-flashing away, and it is a good equalizer. The equalizer lands onto all 5 members and deals a huge amount of damage. The fact that EDG aren't able to just step back up and pick themselves up the Atakan is because of the damage Zika was able to do, but insta-flashing and losing your teleport is not a feels-good situation, and it puts you at a massive disadvantage the next time this play ends up happening. For right now, EDG, they peel away, go pick themselves up this Drake. That's going to be sole point right here for EDG, and they are more than comfortable doing this because they have no expectation that LNG can start up the Atakan buff, and they are correct in that assumption.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that teleport from Zika a little bit as well. I mean, it would have been good if all of EDG was still in the Otacon pit. Then you could throw the ultimate over, still get yourself a little bit of space, but LNG was pushed off of it and forced to retreat way too early, and that resulted in Zika going down. Of course, didn't end up paying for it with the Otacon, but they are now finding themselves maybe even in a further deficit as the gold lead is now up to about 3,500. That was LNG actually starting this objective up as they do spot out Xiaohao on the bottom side and also have ZDZ pushing bot as well. Angel has to be careful as he will dodge away for now from the solar flare and the shroud keeping him alive for now. See how teleport does come in. ZDZ looking to join the fray, and now with Xiaohao in the area, LNG are forced to peel off the Otacon.
You're not going to be able to pick this one up as LNG, but they do at least get the Enchanted Crystal Arrow out and a couple of teleports, so they are going to be in a strong position overall. Interesting decision-making plays right here to send your jungler to go be the one to push out the mid lane. It works though when you're on the Nocturne because you can use that paranoia to go and join up the team fight pretty quickly. LNG, they're still going to stand around this one. They're still going to try. Mid lane tier tower is just being taken by the jungler.
Yeah, so almost EDG daring LNG to finish off this Otacon. Xiaohao does have the paranoia, should be able to jump into the pit using that control ward vision that is available. Wei going to potentially be the target as immediately Zhuo is the one who starts to engage again. Haichao unable to land a single person on the Emperor's Divide as it's already a 2-0 going EDG's way. Assume now has that Ranger's focus unlocked. Angel with the Shuriken flip will take down Zika, and the Otacon is now down to 500 HP. 5,000 I should say. Photic flashing forward. Ooh. The health bars are so low, but he will not be able to find a single kill as Xiaohao and ZDZ are still healthy on the front line as the Otacon is still remaining tethered. Haichao has to be the difference maker here. Potentially Enchanted Crystal Arrow will not connect as finally the Otacon will respawn. Another 3 kills go EDG's way, and LNG wastes even more time on the top side.
Grapes, we're going to do this again. We're going to go again.
Why not?
We're going to get round number 3 of this one between LNG and EDG. This Otacon refuses to die, and as you so expertly pointed out, the amount that LNG lose for this one, they lose a mid lane tier 2 because you're able to just push this one through, and yeah, that's it. That's another one of those Emperor's Divide missing. The Shurima Shuffle just is not happening right now, and you can't keep missing that. That is one of the biggest ultis in the entire game. If you're able to hit that onto multiple members, especially when you've got as much damage on a couple of other carries as you do, when there's a rumble, if you can Shurima Shuffle into an equalizer, that is a couple of kills pretty much by itself, even beyond whatever damage that Photic can add, what Wei can do in the team fight, but you're just not able to do so. And because that first kill is never going over, Wei is far less efficient on his champion too. There isn't a body to take over. He doesn't get all of the buffs that you get from that as a Viego, and these team fights are just going wrong repeatedly. But it's not just the execution of the team fight itself, it's the decision making around it. Losing the mid lane tower, spending so much time just stood.
I mean, there's still 4 people top lane right now. That's like
still
how
staring at it.
It's like, you know, grouping is nice, but you got to force something at some point and come away with you know, an objective or something. Right now they're just bleeding gold across the map. It's now a 5,500 gold lead for EDG. They have, I mean, I'm going to say right now, LNG have not played the map very well. For players that have been very experienced here in the LPL, it's not what we were expecting from this team, specifically coming into the start of this season.
The Voracious Atakan is a big buff. It is. But it is not worth losing thousands of gold across the map, multiple towers. The thing you take Atakan for is what you can do off of a team fight, and then off the back of that team fight, what else you can pick up. We're now in a situation where Atakan stood here, and so is Baron, and so are 4 members of every team. Again, everybody is still around this top side of the map. EDG, though, they're happy with this. This is working for them great. They are not the ones who are making massive errors right here. The longer the LNG decide to bleed gold on the map, the better it is for them. They can just rinse and repeat this one again and again. And talking of again and again, here we go.
Yeah, I mean, having all these semi-globals from EDG definitely helps. It means that they're able to get to the fight a little bit faster. Speaking of, Enchanted Crystal Arrow immediately lands onto Photic, and the Paranoia will force him to Arcane Shift away. Xiaohao now taking a lot of damage. Taunt lands onto 3 members. EDG popping off in this fight, and already Photic is down. The damage, though, is big on the other side from LNG. Zika burning them down nicely, but nobody falls just yet. ZDZ will be able to reset and teleport right back and do this whole fight again, unless LNG have something to say about it. They posture aggressively, force ZDZ to cancel his base, and it looks like, again, the Otacon will not be taken. It is now 10-1 in favor of EDG.
It's the same fight every time. I might be a part of Groundhog Day right now. We are just going again and again and again. And let's see what EDG can get off of the back end of this fight, because they were obviously able to pick themselves up a kill, but there is also their soul available to them on the bottom side of the map if they have enough time to send someone down there. Now, because of the Paranoia, back up in just a couple of seconds time, I think Xiaohao probably does have enough time to head down there, try to pick up this buff for himself. And let's watch it again. Let's watch the same team fight happen again. Once again, you do manage to land yourself that Enchanted Crystal Arrow. Now, there is still going to be a little bit of getaway. You don't actually manage to pick up the kill onto Photic until, of course, the hook lands. And then all of a sudden, there's very little that you can do. It's a great fight. The thing is, as much as we are, poking at the way that LNG are playing this one out, because of the composition they have, because of the champions they have, Zika does so much damage that these fights are never just winnable for EDG. They have to get 1 kill and then move away.
Oh, this is interesting, though.
Lose this one now.
So EDG is going to get the soul here, but the Otacon might actually get picked up this time. But no! Angel steals it away on the Akali. The jungler wasn't even there. And LNG still are unable to pick up the Otacon buff. Zhuo will fall. Assume is doing so much damage with the Ranger's focus. Haichao finally dashes forward, but he still doesn't have enough. Here comes Xiaohao. Picks up Photic and should be able to grab even more kills as Haichao is next on the menu. He will not burn down, but that is so worth it for EDG. They get 3 kills and they all revive and head right back to the top side of the map.
ZDZ teleports back in because top lane is the best lane, and Angel pushes through mid. What is this game? I cannot believe that EDG managed to steal that one away after we sit top lane for 15 full minutes watching LNG attempt to take this Atakan buff, and there isn't a jungler in the area. They still don't manage to secure it. It feels like a microcosm of the season right now for LNG. Nothing has worked out for them pretty much since they picked up that first win versus Thundertalk in game 1 of the split. And to add just a little bit more to it, it is going to be a Baron going over right here to EDG. They have run the map. They have had complete control over the objectives in this game. Let's have a look back.
We need to see how this happens.
How does it get... It's a great arrow, but the smite's just missed. He's stunned. I think Weiwei's just stunned. It might have healed. It might have just healed at some point midway through. The fight on the back end is crazy as well. Picture in picture, though, you can see LNG are losing out on a ton of map pressure too. And this game just feels so bad for LNG. If you are an LNG fan, you've had a lot of fun, a lot of success throughout your time as a fan of this team, but this split is not it.
And there's always next split. The good thing about the LPL, about the new 3-split format, is that things end relatively quickly here in this first one. The first stand tournament is a little bit more abbreviated. The big one, of course, will start once we get to April, that lead up to try to qualify teams to MSI. But there's a lot of things that need to be fixed here for LNG. They are not playing good League of Legends right now,
No.
even despite all the expectations that were given to them. The gold lead over 10,000 in favor of EDG, as it's been a relatively slow game, but that is exactly the way that EDG have wanted to play this one here. It just seems like LNG never wanted to push the go button until it was way too late.
Let's see if this is just going to be a little bit of a dive right here. The push coming through. They've got a 4-1 going on right now. Do EDG using their Baron to pretty good effect so far. Haven't been able to get the full 1-3-1 going. Top wave is kind of sat in no man's land right now, but it seems like they're more than happy to just slowly push this one through, pick themselves up these towers without over pushing. And hey, at the end of this game, it's going to be very hard to pick an MVP, but I know who my LVP is. I mean, honestly, ZDZ is inting in this game. Look at that. Look at that KDA. How can you die?
Yeah, what did he do? He died one time.
There it
Ridiculous.
goes.
Okay, there comes the Enchanted Crystallera once again. Haichao just not able to do anything in that fight. Taunt lands here on
nice.
Bijou. He's certainly doomed as well. It's a double kill coming in for the Akali. Angel ending this one, or have right now, I should say, at 8-0 and 4. They're going to pick up this bot lane inhibitor, look to end this game right here and right now. Arcane Ship away from the dredge line, now at 3v5 underneath the Nexus turrets, and it should not be like that for long. Zika will fall. Weiwei and Photic running the wrong direction, and it'll be right back to the fountain and right back to the drawing board here for LNG. They get dismantled here in game number 2. 18-1 the final kill score, in EDG are on match point in their last series of Split 1.
If we were talking about momentum games, this one feels backbreaking for LNG. 8 games in a row now they have lost, and EDG dominate in that one. They looked so good from the very start to the very end. They lost 5 grubs and 1 kill.
So not quite the perfect game, but we got very, very close to it.
Very close.
And that first kill was, I think, relatively early into the game as well. So it was not a very good rest of the game here for LNG, as it really just seemed like they struggled to find anything. Like, seemed like they overforced on trying to like make certain decisions, like and not fully committing to them, but also sending too many resources where they like couldn't afford to not fully commit to them. And so EDG got both sides of that in their favor. And then of course I think it all came to a head at that eventual Otacon fight, where EDG not only picked up Soul with their jungler, but they also were able to pick up Otacon with their mid laner.
Just crazy. That set of plays around the topside Otacon might be one of the wildest sequences I've ever watched in competitive League of Legends. The whole time we're watching it, and it's like, okay, is Otacon worth this? And the this in the equation keeps getting bigger. It keeps increasing to what it includes. More Drakes, more gold, more towers, more time spent watching this buff, trying to find that moment that you can go in. And I don't know if it's purely a decision-making issue, you know, a coaching issue, something like that, or if it's a draft issue where you just didn't have the sort of draft that could go in for that kind of team fight. But then you look at the draft and you're like, I don't know, I feel like that should be able to go in for a team fight. You've got yourself an Azir and a Leona. These are great team fighting champions. Drop an equalizer on top of that and you have people killed straight off the back of that damage. They weren't that far behind at this point in the game. Yeah, they lost a couple kills, but it was only a 4,000 or 5,000. It's not an insurmountable gold leader, but it felt like LNG hyper-focused their way in onto that Otacon, and because they weren't able to pick it up, they had no plan B. Plan A was Otacon, and plan B was they lost their Nexus. And I mean, it was plan B.
You know, I know we're pretty big American football fans. There's a phrase that was going around after the Super Bowl. It's not about the Jacks. It's about the Jacks and Joes, not the X's and O's.
Yeah.
And even, you know, the draft could be good here for LNG, but it's about the players executing in the game that really do matter. I just think back to all the times that Haichao had his ultimate, had his flash, didn't use one of them, and ended up hitting nobody and not really being an impact in any of the team fights whatsoever. You know, this was after he had, I think, a very solid game on the Corki in game number 1, and just really, really underperforming here in game 2.
It feels bad to fully focus in onto what that Azir performance was, but unfortunately, it's a big part of why LNG weren't able to pick up that win. Top lane, that initial dive, you don't manage to get that pushback to get some kills onto either yourself or Weiwei, stop a big dive from happening. You left mid lane as well, so you lost out on a ton of gold there. And, okay, Did he hit one? Like, I genuinely don't know that I saw one hit
I
in
don't
a
know.
big team fight. We should know, right? We should
Yeah.
be able to say for certain in a full 30-something minute game, did you hit an ulti on Azir? And the answer should be yes. And I genuinely cannot remember one happening. And if it did, it wasn't in one of those big team fights. You could see here, Haichao did a ton of damage in that game, was able to do a lot to the opponents, but it just didn't matter. It didn't matter in the end. Look at these kill participation. There were no solos. This was team fight after team fight after team fight.
Well, congratulations to Zika and Weiwei. They have the highest, kill participation in
And
a game
ZDZ.
in LPL history, 100%.
ZDC also got it. Like, as much as you joke and it's funny, someone on the other team, on a team who did get more than one kill, also had 100% kill participation. ZDZ had a brilliant game. Every single time an arrow hit, he was immediate on that hero's entrance, was getting involved so brilliantly. This was the first one of those missed shuffles, and it just didn't get better. Flashing in a straight line, it's both micro and macro mistakes the whole way through from LNG. It really is unfortunate. It doesn't feel like they knew how to play this game out at all. We were saying, like, hesitant, unsure, not able to pick the right decisions, and it's just showing itself up again and again.
This is one of the many Otacon fights that we had here in this game, and yeah, as you said, ZDZ playing a terrific one here, landing that knock up here on the hero's entrance. I want to give some credit to Assume as well, landing some really nice long-range Ashe ultis and actually doing the most damage in the game as a whole. I think if I had a player of the game, it would be one of those two, maybe leaning a little bit more towards Assume, but I think ZDZ has had himself a really nice series, playing great in both games.
The thing that's most exciting to me about this game, this series so far, is that this is now 2 games in a row where I can't go, yeah, that guy for MVP, because so many players on EDG have had great performances. It's felt like from top to bottom, Wink has had great plays, ZDZ has had great plays, all of your carries have as well. It's just been so nice to see for an EDG squad that have had so many struggles that actually they're winning a ton of these team fights. That was a very nice sidestep as well, and let's have a look at this steal one more time.
Okay, look, so it goes to like 1100 and then it jumps back up. I guess it's because it's in the healing zone of the Otacon. It has a circle around it. So that is what ended up doing it here.
Look, as a jungler, I feel him. I really do. That has happened to me as well. It just feels so bad compounding upon everything else that had already happened, and then you get it stolen away. It was just a nice play. I'm sad. This is actually one where I am sad about Fearless, because this composition out of EDG was so much fun. I would watch this composition again and again and again. Watching the full dog pile every single time. You saw it, Enchanted Crystal Arrow gets thrown, and everybody goes flying in immediately. It's so much fun to watch. This is sort of the hyperactive version of the Wombo combo. We can do it from anywhere on the map.
Yeah, I mean, 3 ultis all landing on the Haichao to end the game, essentially, here. As EDG... coming through, I think not having a ton of expectations overall from this roster going into the start of the 2025 season. However, you look at, other rosters, maybe like an Ultra Prime or something like that. They have a lot of developmental young pieces on this team. That's not necessarily the case here for EDG. They've got some good veterans who've played on top teams in years past. And so for this roster, if they want to start having good performances, it's not necessarily about the individual performances from these players getting any better. It's about how they're able to gel together as a team, because they already have that LPL experience. And so far, even though their first 2 series did not go their way, I think that this series against LNG is proving that there is the capability of them to achieve those goals, potentially as we look towards next split.
Absolutely. It's unfortunate that we have to look towards next split for these teams, but you want to go in with a bit of momentum. You want to go into your off-season off the back of a win, and what a win it would be if EDG are able to pick themselves up the next one. The player of the game will be Angel. Okay. I don't disagree. I don't necessarily agree. Everybody played that one out really well. It felt like Angel was just buying so much space around those Atakan fights, because you were waiting for the arrow to come in, but the whole time it was just all about what Angel could do to go jumping in, see if he could pick himself up a couple of extra kills. It wasn't necessarily the flashiest of Akali games, but it also was still very good.
Yeah, had some little highlight moments in there, especially at the start of the game that didn't result in too many kills and then was just solid the rest of the way. But hey, Angel, 2 in a row in terms of the MVP. Congratulations to him. We'll see if LNG have any chance of coming back in a reverse sweep or if it'll be EDG winning their final game of the group stage. We'll be right back with a Game 3 draft after this. Hello everybody and welcome back to LPL English, where we've got our third game coming up between Edward Gaming and LNG. So far it has been all EDG, specifically in that last game. 18-1 the final kill score as Edward Gaming put themselves to match point. And just a lot of questions to be answered for LNG, not just for the remainder of the series, but for even going into next split as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about momentum. It's important both in this game and across the splits as well. EDG, they've got everything going into this game number 3. If they can pick that one up, it's going to feel great. Sure, you've not had the split that you wanted. You were able to end on a high. A 3-0 is especially exciting for them. Exact opposite, though, for LNG. They're going to have to dig themselves out of a mighty deep hole, both in this series and overall. We're very hopeful that they can do it. I want more games. I want to see more of this series. But so far, it just hasn't quite felt like they've been able to put it together at any stage of the game.
Now, if you are a keen viewer of the LPL English stream, you might be looking around the broadcast and noticing that maybe things look a little bit different. Well, that's because LNG is one of the few teams in the LPL that actually have a home stadium. And so we are headed over to Suzhou, the hometown of LNG, which, you know, a lot of good vacation spots there. That the LNG might have to be thinking about their vacation plans after what was a pretty rough first split.
Yeah, they're going to have a little bit of free time as we go on to the playoffs coming up. I mean, I'd assume they wouldn't really want a vacation in their hometown, but if it's as nice as this graphic makes it sound, potentially you do want to. I haven't had a holiday in a while. I think after this series, I might seriously need one, so potentially this could be a good spot to head on to. I love the laptops fact as well. That's a great fact and a great place to go, because who doesn't love being where laptops are produced?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of good computer vibes here in Suzhou. So for LNG, it makes sense to have their stadium here. A lot of good food, it looks like. Original pasta, the original recipe for pasta originated from this area, as well as what our producer Kelsey was saying, a ton of really nice gardens, which maybe LNG are going to go and sit at and maybe try to regain their mental composure in a way as we prepare ourselves for the next split. Because for now, both of these teams not, having an opportunity to lock a spot into the playoff bracket. They are more looking for improvements and things to work on for next split. EDG so far are giving us a lot more to be excited about as we head into the Game 3 draft.
Absolutely they are. Nobody wants to go into next split being the 0-3 team that weren't able to pick up any of those wins. And because of the way that this split is, 3 quick best of 5s and then you're done. And this one being a quick 3-0, it's just not the way they want to end this one out. The bans are going to look pretty much exactly the same. We are once again going to see LNG on the blue side. It is the coveted side, and we finally get to see the Cassante. It doesn't get banned away and is just going to be insta-locked. First pick for Zika. It's a great pickup for Zika. We've seen both Zika and ZDZ have amazing performances on it. Such a good general all-round pick. Can get solo kills, can also just be that big tanky frontline piece that you need. Kind of the same thing for the Ambessa. They're very similar champions in the way that they actually end up playing out in terms of the map. The Ambessa should be able to do a little bit more damage, but in terms of the straight-up 1v1, it's very even with a potential for some solo kills, so we're going to have to keep our eyes on that top lane. Right now, it looks like it is going to be a lock-in for the jungle right here, and we are going to get the Zyra. Now, that is a champion that can do a ridiculous amount of damage, and also ganks very effectively early on.
And so for LNG, they might be looking to try to just go back to what has been working for them. The Pantheon Huffer from Weiwei might be a sign of that. Those two champions were the ones that Zika and Weiwei were playing in the one win that LNG did have in the first game that they played against Thundertalk in the first split of the LPL. So that is going to get locked in. Weiwei going to have an aggressive jungler that he can try to make some plays on. We'll see how they wrap things up on the other side. Aurora here for Haichao to round out the first phase.
And all of the previous times that we've seen LNG pick up the Pantheon for themselves in the jungle, they like to pair it with the Cassante. They like it to be a pretty tanky sort of top side, and then they like a very aggressive bottom lane. That's the sort of lane that you can really play around. Pantheon is a great ganking champion early on, does so much damage because he's built to be in a solo lane, built to be going toe-to-toe early on, and so if you can pair that up with an aggressive bot lane, often they like to pair up with the Kalista. Obviously, that isn't going to be available. We're actually running out of those top-tier of ADCs available. We'll have to see if we're going to get another ban onto something like the Xayah, or if we're going to move on to other aggressive picks. There's always the possibility of something like the Draven, something like the Kai'Sa. Either of those could be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the top tier AD carries are off the board for now, but there's still a lot of really powerful picks that can still come through. Those two that you mentioned, absolutely. The Rakan ban might disincentivize that just a little bit here, but looks like a mid laner potentially could be banned away here for LNG, as they already have Haichao's champion locked up. Looks like on the other side, maybe a support ban could be in the works here for EDG. You can see they're targeting that pool already with the Rakan taken away.
Lucian actually going to be taken off of the board, something I really haven't been seeing a lot recently. There's been some more hyper carries in the bottom lane compared to things like the Lucian, but I can understand wanting to get rid of it. If you compare it up alongside something like the Zyra, like the Alistar, that's a great set of ganking combos where you can take people out very quickly, and it will work out just fine. EDG, their composition right now, team fight's great. I really like what they've got for themselves in terms of straight up team fighting. The early game, though, feels like it's going to be in LNG's favor at the moment, so I want to see if they decide to index further into that.
There's that Jinx that we were talking about as well. I feel like right now for LNG, that Jinx would have made a lot of sense given Haichao's struggles so far in this series, and also how Photic, you know, can be maybe a big carry or has to be a big carry for them. But in the bot lane pool, getting heavily targeted here. That's the Jhin taken off the board. Another utility-based ADC that seemed to be working well for Assume in that last matchup. The Talia for Angel would be a very fun pick. This is one of his best champions historically throughout his career. I think Bull has a 14-5 record on it, including a win actually earlier this season, which you can't say about many of the other champions that EDG have played this year.
No, you cannot. And it also works really well into what LNG have for themselves, because they are going to be trying to run at you so much. A lot of dashes that you can use very effectively as well, and also a lot of poke too. But hey, I said aggressive bot lanes. It's not quite the aggressive that I was envisioning, but it sure is a just miserable bot lane to try to play up against. A Kai'Sa lock in here would be kind of crazy. That's a very short range champion trying to play into a Lux Caitlyn.
Yeah.
I don't think you have a good time.
At that point, you're just handshaking a lane swap probably. Like there's no way that you're gonna play this Kai'Sa Alistar lane into the Caitlyn Lux this early, so it's gonna get locked in. We're probably gonna see some lane swap shenanigans. I would assume early on.
Yes, if you don't as EDG and you just decide to play this one out and leave your bot lane there, you're conceding that the bot lane is over. You don't want to play that one out. You definitely want to switch them out, but also lane swaps are difficult. As much as we see them a ton, all the way from the top tiers down to some of the tier 2, tier 3 regions, they're not easy to execute perfectly. And both of these teams have shown that for as much as EDG have looked better so far, not all of their macro has been absolutely top tier. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they can get out of this lane swap. If it's just to protect the bot lane, or if they're actually going to be able to get some dives off onto the top, really get that priority in the lane and be able to use it to get some grubs or an early Drake or something like that. We'll have to see.
Yeah, looking specifically at the pathing of these junglers early on to potentially facilitate those dives on either side lane. K'Sante and Mbessa generally decent in terms of surviving early on, as they've frequently been that target. But LNG, I like that they're pushing the initiative a little bit. It looks like they have a specific goal in mind of how they want this early game to go, and they will have to execute on it well if they want to stay alive in this series, because right now it's been all EDG. They are up 2-0, looking to at least pick up their last win here in the group stage of Group C in the LPL first split of 2025. Game number 3 getting underway shortly. We're about to head on to the Rift.
EDG channeling a couple of world champions, picking up their skins. I always like to see that on these professional teams. Like you said, it really is all or nothing right here for LNG, and I love that they've fully gone in on the early game. This is a sort of composition that if you can get it working early on, it's going to be huge. But if you can't, if you fall behind up against the composition that EDG have drafted themselves, team fights are going to be so tricky to try to play out. And things like the Pantheon, whilst they aren't full early game all the way in like they are in the lanes, still are very much trying to get things going early on and don't want to be falling behind. The thing with the Caitlyn is that it feels a lot, in a lot of situations, like an off-brand Ziggs, where you want to get 5 turret plates into this champion in the bot lane or top lane, depending on the lane swap, and then 5 more plates once you roam it into the mid lane, and then you're in a really strong position. If you fall behind though on the Caitlyn, she's not in such a strong position in the meta at the moment where you're just able to be doming people. Kai'Sa though is so tricky to try to play out in this matchup specifically that I wonder if that potential weakness of the Caitlyn is sort of plastered over.
And you see right now, because it is EDG that actually initiate the lane swap, it'll be Assume and Wink most likely headed up to this top side first. That actually does a lot of good for Photic and Zhuo. Because the bot lane towers do not have that early resistances on the turret plates, they're going to probably be able to get a good chunk of them very early on in this game.
Yep.
You can see ZDZ not even trying right now to stay towards the bot lane so far. Maybe just trying to help Angel get a little bit of extra push and wait for what could be an interesting setup later on, as we might get vertical jungling here with Weiwei starting off the enemy blue buff.
Entirely possible, and I do like this decision right here out of ZDZ to just concede, to not worry so much about going down into this bottom lane, because the push is going to be so much, because the poke is going to be so much, and knowing that Weiwei is going to be down in that bottom side of the map definitely could be a potential to dive. Obviously, as Angel, you don't love having some of your XP taken away, but it's really not the end of the world, and it does unlock so much for Zhao Hao, able to wander around this top lane completely unbothered, and can even call ZDZ up if you want to go for a dive in a couple of minutes time, or potentially right now if you want to really push the tempo before Zika has all 3 of his spells.
Yeah, so the difference here right now is Zico has been able to hit level 2, and it's going to be a 4-man dive onto this bottom side. Zico dashes away with the shield, Pathmaker's out as well. Very defensive early level allocation here for Zico. Did not even go for the Intofo strike, so we'll be able to escape rather safely. And again, because of the way this lane swap is settled, look at the plate difference right now for Photic and Zhuo. They're almost done with that second plate, whereas, you know, on the top side, EDG haven't even been able to take one.
Yeah, it really is helping out right here onto LNG, because you don't lose your top laner as well. You're just in such a better position, and you're not losing out on to all of this extra XP right here onto your top laner. You know, you're at least around in the area. Photic, Joe, they're going to be happy with the way that this one plays out. We'll have to see how long this continues though, because the next objective we're going to be looking at, Grub's 2.5 minutes time. That would then begin to favour out onto EDG. That would put them in a very good position to move towards that one. I'd say, hey, LNG, they're going to be in a great position for Drake, but it hasn't felt like anybody's cared about that one so far.
So Haichao dashing away for now. It looks like they're going to be able to pick up another plate here on the top side, but this is going very well so far for LNG. I mean, this is the power of this Caitlyn Lux lane. Even though you can lane swap, because of the changes that Riot has made, makes it very punishing for Assume and Wink in this situation. So Photic and Zhuo going to be able to pick up both or all of these plates, at least at the moment, and now find themselves in a pretty good position here in this game. The trade-off on the other side is that because Weiwei spent a lot of time helping out Photic and Zhuo, Zhao Hao was able to get a much bigger CS lead, or just up at least a couple of camps. And so overall, we're rather even in terms of the gold, as it looks like the lanes are going to be reassigned right now as ZDZ teleports to the bottom side.
Indeed, they are. Everybody just going to be moving back to their standard lanes, and so out of this lane swap, who's come out on top? Well, the gold is pretty much dead even. In terms of where the gold is sat, there's a little bit of advantage for the bot lane of LNG. But overall, it really hasn't changed all that much, which is a good thing for the bot lane of EDG. That is the point of why they've moved around, because that bot lane matchup would have been so miserable. In fact, they're still just going to reset and head top lane. They still don't want to get back involved in that 2v2. It doesn't matter that they're not necessarily getting a massive advantage over their opponents. It's about making sure that you don't lose a ton of kills and a ton of pressure to a poke bot lane that really wanted to be able to bully out an opponent.
Yeah, you can see right now, this is the way lane swaps work, where the top laners really get screwed over quite a bit here. Zika only at 2 CS, but he's going to take that if it means that you know, Photic and Zhuo are going to get out to a nice early lead. Already we see the Berserker Greaves lined up, and we're going to see EDG try another dive here. Zika already knows that this is happening and immediately runs away. Pathmaker to try and withstand some of that damage, and it's going to be right back to the plates here for EDG.
They can just continue on chunking these ones down. It's taking a very long time. That feat gonna go down very soon, right? The structure is so nearly gone. I love the demolish as well onto Zhou. Just really knew what was going to be happening in this one, really trying to index into this being as strong as possible, and it is actually going to be an early move towards the Drake for Weiwei. They are going to recognize that, hey, we've got all of this pressure bot lane, going to be able to pick up this tower at just 6 minutes, 20 seconds into the game, and also grab an early Ocean Drake, and to be honest, an early Ocean Drake is great here too, exactly the kind of thing that you want to pick up. It makes it so much easier for your top laner to be able to just sit and chill, but to be honest, top laners have been a little bit homeless so far throughout this entire game. Not really had a lane to go and farm and do what they want to. Luckily, both Cassante and Ambessa have a lot of innate capabilities that means it's not going to be the end of the world.
So we're just trading objectives here, you know, on the top side, obviously, where EDG have control. Xiaohao picks up the 3 grubs, and on the bottom side, it'll be the first dragon of the game picked up here for Weiwei. As we now see the Caitlyn Lux lane rotating back towards the top side of the map, even more plates to pick up because they took that first turret so fast. They'll have up to 7 minutes to get even more gold into their pockets.
Exactly what you want to be able to do on the Caitlyn. Perfect execution so far of what you're looking to do with these lane swaps. Grubbies. Next set, going to be up in another 3 minutes time, so still a while until that one, but if you can keep this push going on in the top lane, you're going to be able to pick up that first Drake and get 3 for 3 on the grubs, which would be great. Obviously, any composition that has got yourself a Caitlyn would like to have as many grubs as possible just to do the little bit of extra damage to the tower. And finally, we are actually going to see these bot laners face off against each other. Again, this has all benefited EDG's bot lane as much as you are going to be very happy with the outcome so far for LNG.
Yeah, you know, you're down 300 gold, but if you're playing standard lanes, you might be down a lot more, or
Yes.
even more XP because of how starved the Caitlyn Lux really can put these 2 champions at. I think right now the strategy for EDG is to just go in early and try to just one-shot one of these players if they get the right opportunity, potentially with Xiaohao joining the fray as well. Speaking of, he is around the top side of the map. That could be a play, as Angel is also posturing towards the top side. It does have the Weaver's Wall available. Looks like instead, though, with Vodik and Zhuo backing away, they decide to opt against going for that and backing, just going for a little bit of a self-reset.
And off of all of these shenanigans trying to help out these bot laners, the people who have been suffering are the top laners, although one certainly more than the other. Zika, 11 CS, 13 now at this point in the game. Not the ideal number, although nothing he could really do, and the fact that you don't die, don't get dove, is going to be a good boon for your team, but it does just mean that it's been a little bit of a rough one early on, and he is down almost 700, 800 gold in that lane. That is a pretty big gap. Right now isn't expressed in terms of pure item advantage. Once ZDZ gets back from this recall, though, should be a pretty big advantage in that lane. Yeah, indeed, there's going to be quite a lot of components ready and waiting, although I don't know if ZDZ is really going to be able to use that advantage to actually pick yourself up a solo kill. This matchup can give solo kills, but I'd be surprised in this actual situation.
Yeah, especially because of the long lane that Zika has to work with, and the fact that ZDZ only has, doesn't have that tower taken down on the other side. Looks like for now, I would imagine both top laners just basically sit around until they are asked to teleport for this next spawn of grubs, which I assume is something that is going to happen here with it getting ready to spawn in about 30 seconds. As you mentioned, the Caitlyn Lux lane would love to have some extra grubs on their side to continue to add to their sieging prowess. ZDZ actually setting himself up a nice wave state, instead clearing it all out and getting ready for that potential engage.
Yeah, doesn't want to have a ton of minions down in his wave right at the point at which you might be wanting to teleport away, might be wanting to go and get involved on the rest of the map. Right now, everything has been calmed. 0 kills at this point in the game. Only the grubs and the drakes have really gone over. The towers too, of course. But I'm expecting things to get a little bit scrappy, a little bit more interesting now that this second set of grubs have spawned. It would be so huge right here for EDG if they were able to get all 6 for themselves. I think that's going to be very hard, especially because LNG have got the fast track on over towards this objective, but Xiaohao is in the area.
Yeah, looks like at least one will be picked up here by Weiwei, most likely. There it is. So no feat of strength given over, but it could be potentially more grubs in favor of EDG. Binding lands just onto Wink, and so they will be forced away. And EDG actually finding themselves up in gold, despite the Caitlyn Lux taking that first tower because of the strength that they've been able to generate across the other sides of the map. And they're going to be able to get 5 of the 6 grubs to start this game off.
EDG do concede a large push down in the bottom side, but to be honest, EDG is going to be able to get down here, pick up the XP, at least for most of these, and the majority of the CS itself. So really didn't end up having to lose out on too much. LNG, they didn't bring 5 members up to that fight, so they knew they couldn't actually take the team fight. They were able to get a single grub, which was good, but still, it feels a little bit hesitant. Maybe they could have roamed some more people up, or maybe they could have tried for a bigger push down in the bottom lane if they didn't think they were going to be able to actually contest. Instead, nothing too much happens with this one. 5 grubs to 1, as you said, and we've got ourselves a Drake spawning in under a minute's time. It is going to be an Infernal Drake as well, always a good one to try to get a fight around, and I think at the moment, if you are EDG, you're probably pretty happy to go for a team fight. You're not particularly far behind. You're very close to first items being completed, down a little bit, but in terms of just champion power, you are in a good enough spot to try to bully out LNG in these team fights and at least take up your space, even if they don't get the objective in the end, not allow it to be easy for LNG with their early game composition.
So it looks like the Dragon will be the next focus here. LNG doing a good job at least figuring out when they want to hard commit for certain objectives, even if it's for something as little as securing one of the grubs to make sure EDG don't get all 6. We're still awaiting that first blood, as you know, this might be one of the latest first bloods we ever get here, or we've ever had so far this season in the LPL. Almost 12.5 minutes into this third game. Both teams playing very cautiously, knowing, specifically for LNG, that this could end their season on a very sour note if they just make one single-year mistake. Weiwei looking to maybe start up this Dragon, but ZDZ on a really nice flank, and EDG might want to look for a fight.
Okay, he didn't end up going for it all the way in. Now just does a decent chunk of damage onto Zika, and we're going to continue the theme of this series, which is we're going to stand around objectives, but we're not necessarily going to take them. Just looking for the right angle. Okay. There it is.
There's a headbutt pull. It's onto Weiwei, but not a lot of damage dealt. The plant's doing a little bit here to burn. Feels like LNG back to their hometown of Luzhou, maybe in the gardens a little bit, just playing very zen at the moment.
Very chill, yeah, that's true. You said earlier, I think in the previous game, this isn't LPL League of Legends, this is a bit more LCK.
Yeah.
You are right, and it's very slow, but I think the difference is that, it just doesn't feel like there's a true purpose to the slowness right here from LNG or EDG. It doesn't feel like they're playing this one slow because that's the way they want to play the game. It feels like they don't know how to increase the tempo. They don't know how to make things happen right now. This is a great decision here out of EDG. The second that LNG just wander off, very easy to be able to pick this one up. You had to go and pick up some wave.
Okay. Shout out to the LPL observers. They got a good sense of humor here. Oh, Angel just missed the Unraveled Earth. That's what happened. Okay. That's what they wanted to highlight. I thought they were just showing
I think that results in the no kill, but it is funny to see that both mid laners today have had a couple of
little oopsie.
Yeah, little oopsies. That's a great way of putting it. And so 14 minutes on into this game, we're going to get a Rift Tower spawning up in 1 minute 30. I imagine we're going to get relatively the same thing we've been seeing so far, where it looks like we're going to get a team fight, but we don't necessarily actually start the team fight. After that, though, it's everybody's favorite. 5 minutes, 20 seconds until Atakan pops up. Now,
until all 10 players are just stuck top lane are mind controlled to this objective without any obligation or opportunity to move elsewhere for 20 straight minutes until eventually it goes down.
I'm glad you agree with what I think might end up happening. That being said, these team compositions should be better at just going for fights. As LNG, you don't draft yourself this composition because you want to sit back and chill. In fact, Assume gonna get jumped.
Okay, pops the cleanse. Already the stun used is not the upgraded stun just yet for Weiwei, although he could have it available rather soon. Ace in the hole comes out. That's a good chunk of damage. Weiwei just unrelenting in his chase down of Assume. Finally, will jump him and onto him and pick up first blood for LNG. It's our first kill 15 minutes in.
Let's go. I was wondering if we were actually going to get to an Atakan spawn before the first kill ended up going down. Instead, Assume gets chased forever. Actually doesn't blow the flash. Probably could have lived if he flashed over a wall there and then used the ulti. potentially, but I think that would have been getting a little bit fancy, and you still potentially could have died. Instead, it's going to be happy enough to just keep that one, and it's only one kill going over. Weiwei does have that first completed item. Most champions in the game have got first item completed. Nothing particularly interesting, everybody heading on towards their standard pickups. It's going to be the Sundered Sky for Weiwei, which is a good item if you want to be able to get into the backline, survive a long time, and also deal a decent chunk of damage. It's not the full lethality version that we do sometimes get to see. I think that would have been overly risky of Weiwei. I do agree with going towards this slightly more survivability-based option. But it does mean that when you do jump someone like Assume, you aren't able to just one-shot them as you could with the lethality build.
Well, there's a Herald that you were talking about, Blockster. It looks like EDG going to start this one up. It's about 5,000 HP at the moment, but they're going to let it reset, at least for now. Haichao in the area has not done too much so far in this game, as looks like Weiwei is trying to act as that front line to help protect the main carry so far for LNG, that being this Caitlyn Lux that have been giving so much attention to from both squads. It looks like both teams, though, still very scared of hitting this Rift Herald. So we might actually get a situation here, Bloxer, where if EDG pick up this Herald or the next Dragon, that the feats of strength, or you know, could be. I mean, we could get a world where the feats of strength are picked up. The last one picked up is the kills, which would be a very surprising thing. But right now, it looks like LNG actually going to be the ones to start this one up. Xiaohao not really in a position to go for a steal unless he wants to be in danger of getting taken down. There's the Weaver's Wall. It separates 3 members of LNG, but a nice binding will force Xiaohao away from the pit, and it will mean that LNG will pick up this Rift Herald. That is their second feat of strength in the objective category.
That was an odd Weaver's Wall, wasn't it? It felt more like it blocked Angel from trying to steal the Herald away than it did from actually splitting up LNG. And I think part of the reason that the play just didn't quite work out from EDG the way that they would have wanted is the exact moment that the Weaver's Wall comes through. Assume steps on a trap and gets chunked immediately by Photic. Ends up losing quite a lot of HP in that play, and so it just makes it so much harder to actually try to pull the trigger there. And it was only a couple minutes where we were waiting for that Herald to be picked up, and LNG managing to grab that one means that they should be able to pick themselves up at least the mid lane tier 1 tower, hopefully, and that would be, or sorry, not the mid lane tier 1 tower, the top lane tier 1 tower here, and really open up the map for themselves once these next set of objectives start spawning.
Yeah. Still a little bit of time. You have 30 seconds until that Dragon, and only 1 kill. And
130 for Atakan, though. Yay!
That is true. Then we'll be locked in. Then it's time to really lock in.
Yeah, that's when the game starts for both of these teams. Right. That's the point at which they are excited to play. These are formalities. Atakan, now that's the buff that everybody wants all the way through. Mid lane tower, as I was expecting, didn't need the Rift Tower to be able to pick up that one. Just gonna fall to the fact that, well, you've got yourself a Caitlyn and a Lux, those 2 chunk towers out like nobody's business. And the teams continue their setup. A lot of vision for both teams around this Drake. It has now spawned, and it looks like LNG are going to move their way over towards that one. They did pick up the first Drake as well, so 2 right here would be good. Get themselves closer to that soul point. We haven't seen an Elder in this game, but it would be another big objective for the teams to go and, you know, stand around, look at, potentially take at some point down the line.
It's like they're at like a nature center, and like this is the new animal that they're looking at here. Right now, this mountain dragon not really in danger of going down, as we might see a bit of a fight start up here as Wink comes in with a headbutt pull. The dragon will reset rather shortly unless LNG want to finish it off. If they do pick it up, it will be the full feats of strength going to them, that being the upgraded boots. But instead, LNG pop the Rift Herald in the mid lane. They're going to try to burst open this tier 2 tower and gain mid lane priority with it, and then maybe make their way back to the objective afterwards. You see right now, ZDZ playing very aggressive in a nice flank position, but is unable to really lock anybody down because of how well LNG are grouping up as 5.
ZDZ just going to have to give up that flank angle that he did have. Going to get jumped fully, though, by Weiwei. Flashes away.
The Grand Starfall does come out Weiwei with a lot of movement speed after casting that E, but is unable to lock down ZDZ and take him below 50% health. He will be able to go back to base and teleport right back. Still has that public execution available, and so now EDG are the ones who feel comfortable to actually start up this Dragon. Looks like it could be a bit of a flip unless one side wants to go for an early engage. Who is going to pull the trigger first? Wink still has both of his summoner spells. Weaver's Wall comes out. The dragon at 3,500. Will it actually end up being taken down, or will the fight actually break out? It's ticking, ticking. Nobody wants to do anything until Wink finds Photic, and the main carry for LNG falls. There comes the Strangled Thorns. It does not knock anybody up, but it forces LNG away, and EDG will pick up the Mountain Drake.
There we go, EDG. They're going to bet themselves a kill on the board and actually pull straight back on over to Atakan. Now, everybody from LNG has run away. They have immediately left the area and decided that they can no longer fight this one out. And actually, in the complete opposite of what we got to see previously, this is going to be a very quick Atakan take. EDG going to pick this buff up as well. It's most certainly Voracious, as there's 2 kills in this game, and one of them was 50-50. Just grabbed. But that's now some huge buffs right here for EDG. If they were hoping to close this game out 3-0, this is a great start to be able to do so. With the 5 grubs, the 2 drakes, and that Atakan buff in their back pocket right now, now is the time to pull the trigger. Now is the time to go in and actually get a fight started with those recalls available to you. The buff does not last for very long anymore, so you need to go right now as EDG.
Yeah, push it straight down mid, try to break open that tier 1 potentially. We'll take another look at this replay here. Really nice setup from both Wink and then ZDZ following up really nicely. We get a close-up on Photic as he meets his demise.
Just steps a little bit too far forwards. Not the sentence you want to say in reference to a Caitlyn. Always going to be a mistake when you step up that far, and unfortunately for LNG, the second that they lose Photic after spending so much time and effort trying to get him ahead, get him into a good position in this game, is just a lost team fight. They had to pull away. I do question slightly them completely pulling out, not staying around for the Atakan at least a little bit, because even if they couldn't win the fight, you can be about to steal, you can be about to just force your opponents off. It's very tricky to take Atakan because he does so much damage. The fact they just ran away pretty much just gave it over for free to EDG. They're going to be very happy with that one. Still, not up by very much gold. In fact, with that tower falling, the gold is barely 1,000 apart right now.
Yeah, and they're trading objectives actually decently nicely, all things considered, despite the 5 grubs being in EDG's side. They get the full bot lane tier 2. The Weaver's Wall coming up towards mid. Angel looks like he's willing to sacrifice himself a little bit, knowing that he has that Voracious Otacon buff. If it means it helps get his team mid lane priority, they'll be able to burst down this tier 1 turret. Now the question is, can LNG fight back at all? Teleport comes in here for Zika. Another perfect execution does land. They are underneath the tier 2 tower. They are full sending it because they know they have the revives for just a little bit longer, and that is likely all that they will be. Grand Starfall comes out. Xiao Hao going to probably be targeted here. Not going to burn that flash because he knows he's headed straight back towards the fountain. So, yeah, it's a nice couple of consolation kills, I should say, for LNG, but it just, well, he might get a little bit of gold. It's still a lot of towers going EDG.
That's not worth for EDG. Mid lane tier 1 is good. That is a good thing to have picked up. But they changed Voracious Atakan. You get 200 gold now from each one of these kills. And they don't actually pick up any kills onto LNG. The reason that Voracious is so good is because you get a ton more kill gold when you get a real kill rather than just a Voracious head back to base kill. But they don't actually manage to pick up any kills. They blow a lot of ultis. They get a tower. Like, that's the good thing that they managed to pick up for themselves. And other than that, just give over a free couple thousand gold. This was not a worthwhile play out of EDG, but at the same time, it doesn't lose them that much. They just haven't expanded their gold lead in any way. They started that about up 1,000, and they've ended up about up 800.
Yeah, and maybe getting that extra control around the map with that mid tower taking down makes that worth it. That's maybe the argument that you can throw out there. It did seem like EDG were like, they felt like they didn't want to waste that passive at all, and so they just decided to all run it down. But honestly, if you're gonna give up 200 gold for basically free, maybe it is okay to let it go to waste in a way. Because
I think it probably would have been. Right now, ZDZ once again gonna get jumped on. Actually misses the ulti as well. Oof.
Yeah, he already has to flash. There comes the Between Worlds from Haichao as well. ZDZ low on energy, gonna try to use that passive to get a little bit more, but it will not be enough as Wei Wei picks up the kill. Meanwhile, on the other side, EDG gonna try to use that time to take the Baron, and they do with all the damage that Xiao Hao does have. Assume Uses the killer instinct, try to get away. Zika looking
Oh
to
my
chase
God.
forward, but the unraveled earth makes sure that he dashes straight towards his demise, as it will be an extended 1-for-1 with the Baron going Edward Gaming's way.
EDG pull the trigger on that Baron. They are not afraid to just go for these objectives. We're seeing that throughout this game. Really nice play right there out of EDG. Yes, you lose your top laner, but more than worthwhile to pick out the Baron. That is a good play overall. And they're going to be back out onto the rest of the map now with some extra completed items. That's now 3 items in the back pocket of Assume. And you saw just how much damage he was able to do alongside Angel in that previous one. They're also going to move on over to this Drake. This is going to be sole point right here for EDG. They've put themselves in a very good position to be able to win this game, even with the kills dead even, and they're only up by about 2,000 gold. Still, they are in a very nice, well-controlling position of this game. And this was just an easy Baron take. It's all about the fact you've seen everybody bot lane, and specifically, you've seen the jungler bot lane. And yes, it's a Pantheon. Pantheon can move around the map very effectively, but it just isn't the same as the Nocturne being in mid lane who can jump over with the Paranoia immediately. It takes quite a while for the Grand Starfall to come through, more than enough time for you to be able to pick up the Baron with the composition that EDG have, and I love that they at least are snappy in their decision making. They're not sitting around and waiting for things to happen, and on top of that, as a team who doesn't love team fighting, the fact that a team fight hasn't happened at any point in this game so far has got to feel pretty good too.
Now here's my question for you, Bloxer. As we look ahead, not just for the rest of this game, but for maybe the next season here for EDG, this sort of controlled game that they're playing, where they're not focused too much about kills, they're really like working on map rotations and trying to set things up. Is this something that works against a better team? Because in my head right now, I'm thinking, okay, LNG is just really having themselves a rough couple of weeks, and if EDG try to play this sort of style against maybe a Thunder Talk or a BLG who's a little bit more aggressive, it might not work out as well for them.
No, we got to see what happens when you try this style up against a good team. It doesn't work, because they are being kind of passive with it. And at some point, you get forced into having to teamfight by better teams. Otherwise, you just sit there and allow things to happen to you for the entire game, kind of like what's happening to LNG throughout this series. But it is at least good foundations for EDG. It gives me hope that there is something to build upon for the next split in a way that we didn't have previously. We can see that they can at least pick up wins.
Okay, so that's a very aggressive teleport here from Zika.
Yeah.
Forces all of EDG back at the very least, and now Wink actually could be a big target here. He pops the Unbreakable Will, a 2-man seismic shove does connect, and the E from Weiwei should be able to keep him alive for now. Ultimate does come away, and it will be Photic picking up that 3rd kill of the game. Finally, we get the feats of strength 28.5 minutes into this one. Looks like the ace in the hole will land just onto Zhao Hao, and the rest of EDG will back away with just giving up that 1 kill.
And, like you said, feats finally going on over. Just a ridiculous time for that to finally end up happening, and that's good for LNG. They managed to find themselves that pickup, and that was a very aggressive teleport, like we said. Zico decided to go in very, very deep, but I like that. I think that at this point you have to pull the trigger on bold moves, on bold decisions right there, and the fact you're actually able to pick up the kill onto Wink is quite nice too. He's not that tanky at the moment. Sure, once you pop the Unbreakable Will, it takes a while to get that kill down, but without the Alistair available, that leaves Assume and Angel far more vulnerable, and Xiaohu, to be honest, as well. All 3 of those very vulnerable to the rest of the composition that you have. It unlocks Haichao a lot more to be able to play this Aurora more freely, more unlocked in these team fights, and so being able to pick up that kill is good. Obviously, they don't turn it into too much more, but at least it is something.
So it's now back to watching and waiting time, as the next objective's not for another couple of minutes or so. So we've had a lot of time to just sit and contemplate, haven't we, Daily Boxer?
We have.
Do you have any plans for lunch after this is over? I know you're in Europe right now. Getting close, getting about that time.
I don't. That's a great point. I'm going to have to think about that after the series. Right now, there's very few thoughts in my brain other than what is this series? This has been a fascinating series in the way that it's so odd.
My goodness, Assume
okay.
Just killer instinct straight into Weiwei's face. That could prove
It
absolutely
works.
costly, but it just doesn't, because Haichao dies in the middle of the entire enemy team. EDG get 1 for nothing as the 46 second death timer opens up for LNG's mid.
That's exactly what I was just saying. What is this series? Assume diving in when there's an Aurora on the board and it works. Doesn't even die right there to Photic. Photic's gonna pay with his life here.
Yeah, Public Execution comes in from ZDZ. That'll lock down Photic. Here comes the Grand Starfall from Weiwei.
Assume's
Assume
still
is
here.
rather low. And he does get shut down by the Comet Spear of the Pantheon, but it does not matter because he will go down in response. Still a 4v2 open on top of the map, and ZDZ very powerful at this point in the game. He might have been starved early with a lane swap, but he's all powerful now. Level 16 on the Ambessa and looking to open up this inhibitor tower.
Yeah, the Lux ulti gonna come through. It takes away most of the weight, but not all of it, not enough. They're gonna be able to pick themselves up that inhibitor turret and the inhibitor to boot. EDG, after the game, was very quiet for the first while. All of a sudden, the map explodes open, and they're able to push straight down through mid. They've also got their soul available in a second, but this was insane. Assume going in here is possibly one of the craziest decisions I think I've ever seen. I don't even know where that W was focused on towards, and the fact that this works is disgusting. Like, you should not be able to do that. And I think he realizes, hey, I should be dead here, and walks up randomly to try to get that extra kill onto Weiwei. Does a lot of damage, sure, but at the point at which you have 2 HP, maybe basing would have been a slightly better decision. Either way, it's fun. It was a good little bit of drama that we haven't seen previously, and I wonder if during this play, the Drake will have gone down.
Yeah, it did. And now EDG have the Mountain Soul, so it's looking even more in their control right now. You can criticize it being, you know, maybe not applicable against a better team, but EDG doing what they have to do, taking care of business, you could say, against LNG.
If it works, it's not stupid, right?
Exactly.
Like, it worked. The kills were picked up. That's now 4 items completed onto Assume. Assume is in such a strong position, deals just a crazy amount of damage, and if he can get into the backline, clearly willing to just pull the trigger on that ulti, then that could be a great way to really crack this game open fully. Another great way is to just move on to this Baron for the second time.
And if they pick this up, could eventually lead to the end of the game. The Weaver's Wall will block out Zhuo specifically, as ZDZ is in on the flank with the Zyra and Kaisa. This Baron bursts down so incredibly fast. It will be secured without a question here for EDG. And now the real question is, can LNG escape with their lives after posturing around the pit, maybe a little bit too far forward? Redemption comes out and heals up LNG rather nicely. You can see right now, Zhuo on the Lux barely tickling EDG. And Haichao gets caught out by the Public Execution. It's a double kill in for ZDZ. And that should just about do it. It was not the split that EDG wanted, but it definitely was the series that EDG wanted today against LNG. They pull off a clean sweep, 3-0, and will end this split one on a high note.
Yeah, 3-0's gotta feel good after what has been a rough split for EDG. But this one was great. This one was pretty clean the whole way through. It never really felt like LNG had a chance. EDG were just the better team today. And congratulations to them on picking up their first series win of this split.
And, you know, again, not a ton of playoff implications here for Edward Gaming, but has to feel good to at least head back home and go in knowing that, hey, at least we won a series rather cleanly to wrap up the split. So you can see the handshakes going in as LNG at their home stadium, unable to do their home crowd's justice and come up with a win. And I think overall here, Blockster, as we wrap things up here after this series is over, so many questions for this LNG squad.
Yeah.
They look absolutely lost. That is 9 losses in a row after winning their very first game. Not what you want to see out of a team that had at least some decent expectations coming into 2025.
Yeah, you lose a couple of key members, sure, but the bones are still here. The top lane and the jungle that we've been talking so much about are still available to you. They're still here. This is great players. They've been to high heights. They were in the quarterfinals of Worlds last year. And then this first split, nothing. It felt like in the Demacia Cup, all of a sudden we had some questions, right? They got the first bye. They weren't in the big group stage. They were just straight into the bracket because of how deep they'd gone into Worlds. Fair enough. And then they just immediately lose to Weibo Gaming. Not ideal. Little bit worrying and a little bit suspect, but hey, it's the Demacia Cup. Some teams pop off in the Demacia Cup and then they do nothing for the rest of the split, and other teams do terrible there, but they weren't really fully as, you know, a unit, playing together, working as a team at that point, and then they pop off later on. So there were question marks, there were raised eyebrows, but nothing too much. And then the next 3 games have just completely blown the doors off of it. LNG, it isn't working. Whatever this is, it's not working for the team. Now, whether it's a change going into next split, or if you think that, you know, these players are good, we need to change something in coaching, the meta, it just wasn't in our favor, but next split's meta will be different, and we will be a different team because of it. Lots of questions.
Yeah, I know that, you know, for me personally, was excited to see what this new look LNG roster could do.
Yeah.
You know, you've seen Fodak and Joe, this bottom lane that might have had a bit of a down year in 2024, but overall I've always played on such high quality teams, things like V5 and NIP, specifically with Rookie, and now coming into here, getting this new opportunity, you have somebody like Haichao who, even though on LGD didn't have the best team success, I think a lot of people looked at him individually and thought, this is a player that we could maybe get more out of. Like somebody like a Cream going over to top esports last year, but that really just has not been the case. And I know in the LEC, after they play this, you know, they're the only other league that has had this like 3-split format for longer than a lot of the other major regions had. Roster swaps after the split 1, not super uncommon, and so we'll see what LNG decide to do. I know this is a roster that has a lot of high expectations, but would they be willing to pull the trigger that quickly after, you know, what was obviously a very disappointing performance?
Yeah, I really do not know. I feel like it's a big risk to try to blow this one up and find yourself a bunch of new players, because a lot of teams will be happy enough with the way that their first split had gone, don't want to change things around. It's always tricky to find those top-tier new players, not in the same way that you can at the end of the full year. Everybody's leaving their teams, everybody's moving around. You can find that top-tier talent. It would be tricky for LNG. At the same time, clearly something has to change, but you know, we'll have to wait and see. No use on speculating on that one any further. EDG, I have the same questions, because they pick up the win today, it looks good, but do you stick with it? Because other than beating an LNG team who are struggling massively, they haven't had a good time either.
Yeah, I mean, though those first 2 series were not great. However, I think there were some good things that we saw here from EDG. I think specifically ZDZ in the top lane had himself a really good series. You know, he was somebody who was hyped up going into last year when he was on Weibo at the start of the year, and then this year on EDG alongside Xiao Hao, I think playing relatively well. I think Angel overall solid as well. So things to look for that are good here for this EDG squad are the individual play that they displayed even against EDG and Thunder Talk, or sorry, BLG and Thunder Talk, and it's more the other stuff. How much are they going to be able to do in terms of macro, in terms of team fighting, as we get a look at our final post-game screenshot of the day.
The difference between Zika and ZDD's damage is nutty, but the thing that honestly draws my eye the most is a 4,000 damage Lux. That's nothing. That's support Lux, even with the lack of gold income that you get from playing it in the support role, still usually does more damage than that. Zhu did nothing, was not able to do anything on this champion, and part of that is the lane swap. The lane swap worked out, even though you were giving up a ton more plating gold quicker to the bot lane of LNG. EDG were perfectly happy with that, because they knew they were going to be able to use these champions more effectively later on in the team fights around the rest of the map. This was our first blood at what? 25 minutes into the game.
I'm kind of curious like what highlights they picked for this one, because there weren't a ton. I'm not going to lie, not a ton of highlights in this game.
15 minutes, I think, was the first blood, which is super late. The first Drake was also ignored for a good long while as well. Yeah, there were a couple of big plays right here, a couple of picks. The majority of these fights turn into just one pick, and you're never really able to expand that into a couple more. This one was Angel going in. This was the one where the Ruinous Atakan was, Voracious Atakan was wrong for the wrong team, you know, just went in randomly. This game, as much as it's a win for EDG, it was rough. Like, it was rough from start to finish, and it feels like it's really highlighted to me how much I am excited for BLG versus Thunder Talk. Because both of these teams have beaten these teams, which is great. You have to beat the teams that are put in front of you. But I'm not certain what level that makes BLG or Thunder Talk, right? I don't know how much that means that those two teams are great, or how much that means that EDG and LNG just aren't it this split. Once these two teams face each other, that's when I think we're going to be able to see a lot more of the actual power level relative to the rest of the league.
Yeah, and I think still obviously BLG going to be the big favorites in that series, but I think you know, specifically with their performances against LNG, do you think that what Thunder Talk have done this season has been very exciting? I really like 1xN and Feather, as our observers are maybe flaming the teams a little bit here as well with the zoom-ins and things like that. But yeah, this certainly felt like a battle between two teams that were already out, eliminated, and were both 0-2 going into their last game of the split.
Yeah. Felt like looking for a nice cap off, which EDG obviously do get. Unfortunate for LNG. I think Thunder Talk are fun. I think they're really fun, you know? In as much as I'm not certain they're going to be able to win against BLG, I think they're going to put up a really good fight, and then once we get into the playoff stage, that's where I think we're going to see Thunder Talk pick up a couple of wins against teams who maybe haven't been looking at them with as much respect. Everybody respects BLG. I think that there's a possibility that another good team underestimates how good Thunder Talk are, and that they're able to sneak away a really good series off of someone.
Yeah, and I don't know if we can do this right now, but before we unveil the player of the game, if we just take a look at the schedule for what is left to come for the rest of the week to wrap up the group stage, that would be a pretty cool thing to do either before or after we reveal this POG. Who do you have as
I
the
do not know
player of the
POG.
game? I would say ZDZ this game. Unless they just want to give it to Angel 3 games in a row for fun. I mean, that's
ZDZ
also
would be a good pick, right? Because he got put in the dirt early on and then came back to have a really impressive performance. I think, to be honest, Assume also had a great one. I wonder if it maybe goes to Angel because of that crazy dive-in play, but then maybe over-aggressing onto the kill onto Weiwei was a little bit of a detraction from it. I'm not sure. 3 games in a row where every member of EDG steps up in their own way.
Yeah, so as we wait for that, again, just looking forward, we'll have another one of these O2 matchups, unfortunately, again, tomorrow, as that's just the way that these best-of-5 group stages do end up working. And then after that, every single series has major implications, whether it's the top 2 teams playing against each other for the first or second seed, which determines your spot in the upper or lower bracket, or even matches where the winner could qualify into the playoffs and the loser gets sent home. So a lot on the line as we wrap up our final day of the group stage. Let's take a look at our last POG of this series. It is going to go to ZDZ on the Ambessa.
Yeah, you got that one perfectly right. I mean, it was a very impressive performance. The way that he got put down was on, what, like 13 CS or something, 12 minutes into the game, and then it doesn't matter because you're able to get yourself ahead. There are a couple of those executions that were great as well. Really nice, hitting it onto the right member, being able to pull people through, and also was just buying a lot of space. This one was a really nice public execution as well. Overall, I think ZDG had a great day. I think every single person from EDG has had a great day, and it was really good to see them smiling and happy after the matchup.
Yeah, and it's nice to see one of the players that we were highlighting at the start of the show get a little bit of a nod for their play as well as we wrap up our series here. If we can get one look at the schedule, I just want to show the audience what the matchups are going to look like for the remainder of the week. We have Ultra Prime versus OMG, as we mentioned, tomorrow, and then it gets super fun. NIP RNG, that has some big playoff implications that NIP can look to go undefeated. Thunder Talk against BLG for first place in Group C, as we mentioned. IG versus FPX could also be big, specifically if RNG ends up, winning and then pulling off an upset over NIP. And then the last day, LGD versus Top Esports winner qualifies as the second seed in that group.
So many exciting matchups coming up. Even the one tomorrow, once again, has the excitement of, hey, somebody doesn't want to go 0-3. These teams are going to be scrapping for pride, scrapping to show what they can provide to their teams, that they should be kept around for the next split. So all of these matchups are going to have implications, but obviously the big playoff implications start happening later on. We're obviously very excited for the Thunder Talk versus BLG matchup. That one's just massive in terms of what this group means, and also in terms of being able to actually see the real relative power level of these teams, but all of them are going to be fun.
Absolutely, and you could come right back here to LPL English at the exact same time. It's 4 a.m. Eastern time, 1 a.m. Pacific time. I think it's 10 a.m. or 9 a.m.
8 a.m. 8 a.m. That's the one.
8
8 a.m. in Europe.
the UK. So make sure to stay tuned for all of those games for the remainder of the week. Well, that's going to do it here on LPL English. Before we go, we want to give a huge thank you to our elite coffee subscriber, Aaron Saporis. Their pledge financial contribution helps level up the broadcast and give back to the cast and crew who strive to give you a fantastic LPL English product every single day. On behalf of the entire crew here on the show today, Black Bloxer, Ilya, and Alk Battery, my name is Ian Grapes. Final score here, EDG 3, LNG 0. We'll see you here tomorrow on the LPL.